Okay, it's trying one more time. It's actually
Says
trying to
it's
connect.
says it's live on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what it's trying to connect to YouTube. So
Oh,
it looks like it's almost there, and then we'll get going.
yeah, we can go ahead and start.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. It's trying one more time. It's actually trying to connect.
Says it's live on YouTube.
Yep. No, we're good. Now we're hearing our echo. So, all right, we're ready to go. So I got the chat box up on the side. We got our poll questions that are being answered. And I'm going to put it on speaker view so that everybody can see you as you're speaking here.
Okay.
And it's going to flip back and forth. So recording pause. Sorry, all these things to get going. Okay, now we're recording. So just want to welcome everybody to our first virtual home buying workshop. Very happy to have my dad here, who has taught the home buying classes now for over 22 years here in Ventura County, and done it ever since I was in high school. I remember you teaching on base quite a bit. You did that for a number of years, right, Dad?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over at Magoo and Wainimi for many years, helped many sailors, helped many families in Ventura County and throughout the country with this class. Also, just want to thank everybody who just made the effort. A special shout out to Mike Cloud. I know he got at least 3 to 5 different people to sign up for this class. He had an awesome experience when he was, first starting the home buying process. So just want to give a thank you to Mike Cloud and everybody else who really pushed this out there, because we got a total of about 40. Well, there's 24 currently on, but about 40 that registered for this event. So so we got some high expectations for an awesome workshop here, Dad.
Yeah, no pressure there. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, sounds good. Oh, you're gonna leave it on me, huh?
No, hey, I want to thank all you folks for taking the time to hang out with us a little bit. Thank you, Brand, for setting this up. And like you said, this is our first crack at a virtual one, so we'll try to minimize the technical glitches and apologize in advance in case something does go screwy on it. But I think for the most part, we should have a pretty good session. So real quick about me, just so you know where I'm coming from, it might give some reference or at least a little bit of credibility to some of the things we're going to talk about. Been doing this for a while. Actually was contracted out by Pacific Oaks Credit Union to teach it for a couple of years back in the early 2000s. And that was after they had seen me teach at the base or heard about some stuff at the base. So they asked if I'd come out, kind of reciprocate some of that out to the veterans and some of the civilians out in town who didn't have access to the base. I said, sure. And it's one of the more fun things that we get to do from my perspective, especially as a broker now, is kind of teach this process, because it's something that, I think it's probably primordial that we all want to have our cave for our family to reside in, right? We want to have some kind of domicile that's ours. Renting is not a bad tool to a future, reality for you. It provides a service, and I don't begrudge any landlords, especially the ones that are doing a good job taking care of their tenants. But what a concept if everybody listening to this could someday be their own landlord, and there's no reason why you can't. But what tends to happen with a lot of us is we rationalize ways not to go forward, where you can have a why personality or a why not personality. And a lot of the folks who are thinking why need to be nudged a little bit gently forward. So why being, why do I want to buy in this market? Or why do I want to buy in this area? Why do I want to buy in the prices are out of sight? And that's a very introspective answer to that question. I can't tell you why. I can give you some benefits of purchasing, definitely. And there's always going to be a cost associated. Whenever you have a benefit, there's always a cost to it. So this really comes down to every person who's hearing this, who's going to pull the trigger at some point, is going to do a cost benefit analysis with their own family. And they're going to determine, hopefully, it's going to switch from why to why not. Why not go forward and make this endeavor that, I've been paying landlords forever? Why not be my own person in charge burning my meat in my backyard on that grill instead of burning my meat in somebody else's backyard in that grill, right? I want to burn meat, I want to burn it on my grounds. Well, let's get you in a good spot where you can burn some meat on your grounds. It's not just hot dogs. You're going to burn some decent meat. And there's a method to that. So we're going to talk about the method. We're going to talk about the mindset, because it really is a mindset, as you can kind of get a feel for where I'm going with some of this. We're going to talk about the process as a whole, because what tends to happen from my experience is people get on this emotional roller coaster when they think about buying a home. And that's extremely normal, very rational thought to get excited. But if you get excited to the point you make an irrational decision based a lot of times on good intentions, meaning in the Navy, we call them sea lawyers. Somebody's chirping in my ear telling me I need to do this because otherwise there's something bad going to happen. Somebody's chirping in this ear telling me to do that. Otherwise something else will happen. People chirp all the time in our lives for good intentions and sometimes can have a bad effect. Perfect example. You need to buy because interest rates are historically low. I know you've heard that one. You need to buy because the prices are going to go out of sight at some point. You've probably heard that one. When really what we should be doing to ourselves is, when can I buy? When should I buy? And how much should I buy? And that's going to come up. So I'm jumping a little bit ahead. But the real thought to go forward from right now, the rest of this little workshop, is how we see things, one, that we can control, and two, that's going to benefit me for my short term and my long term duration. Okay. That's why we want to be careful of the emotional roller coaster that comes down and we flatten out. We found out we reacted into a bad situation. And that's how you got 10.5 to 11 million foreclosures from 06 to 14. People got on that emotional roller coaster and they took interest only loans. They took adjustable rate mortgages that were completely off the charts, right? A lot of good intentions. I want to keep this positive. I'm not going to point a finger at anybody in the industry, but a lot of good intentions went south for a lot of really, really good people who were never going to pay those homes off. And now some of those people, they completely recovered and they're in a good spot, but there's a good majority of them who were terrified and put their toes back in the water, so to speak, because they got hammered the last time they did it. So a vehicle like tonight's workshop hopefully will show you some things that you can do proactively that you can control, and you can go forward with a plan and a purpose that's going to ensure not only getting the home, we're going to get you the home, but you get the home, one that you truly want and one that you can truly afford. Okay. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff coming up. If you have questions, please shoot them into the chat box. We're going to do a Q&A after this. And Brandon has a great idea. I think we may even do part 2 tonight and then part 2 again tomorrow for those who can't stay tonight. You want to talk about that real quick, Bud, and then I'll pick up.
No, great overview, great intro. So again, split up into 2 parts here. We got today's going to be for the first day, talking a lot about the mindset, about the preparation, the things that my dad just spoke about. Going into the second day, we're going to get more into the transactional piece of it. What it takes in terms of understanding the market, how to negotiate the contract, how you're protected by the contract, the time frames, many more of the details of what to expect with that. So that's supposed to be for the second day. I had a few people email me that they won't be able to make it tomorrow. So my dad and I had spoke before this, and what we've decided to do is we're going to do the hour session here, do the Q&A to follow directly after that. That'll be 15 to 30 minutes, question and answer. Take a little quick break and then hop back on for the final hour. For anybody who wants to just knock it all out today, just shoot, just if you can, and we can do another poll in a little bit, just saying if you want to finish it all today or if you plan to come on back tomorrow. So we know as long as we got one person, we'll do it for that final hour again today. We still are going to do it tomorrow. So, don't want you to think that we're not going to keep it in these hour sessions. And we did that because we know it's a lot of information. When my dad's taught this historically, it was about 4 hours worth of real estate section alone. Then you had a loan officer section, and 8 hours in total at one session is a lot. We're going to try to do that all in an hour here today and then an hour tomorrow. So, so wanted to throw that option. I see somebody saying they'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, Ryan, for responding to that. And yeah, just feel free to ask questions as we're going through this. We want to engage this as much as possible. We don't want to do death by PowerPoint. We got a PowerPoint that my dad's had for some time. Also got Mike saying back for tomorrow. So that's great. So most people are just going to be here for this hour session. Again, a lot of prep, a lot of very important questions to really think about, because this isn't just about just jumping into, writing an offer and purchasing a home. There's a lot that is involved, a lot to be considered. And I feel that's what my dad has really refined over the years to understand, and people appreciate that this is a strictly informative seminar that's to help equip you with the details of what you need. Any other points I didn't touch on, housekeeping, Dad?
No, sounds great.
Okay. Do you want to start with a part of the PowerPoint, or how do you want to go from there?
And I'm going to use these more for talking points. If you want to do the first one, just the opening thing, because it's got the one question: is it the right time for you?
Sure.
So I think that is the heart of this entire process, really. Is it the right time? When we look at everything we do, for the most part, life is based on timing. But just try to imagine the largest financial commitment you're ever going to make in your home, how essential that is that you do it during the right time frame, right? And the time frame may not necessarily be market time frame, although it can. It's really going to be your time frame. Have you done the right things? Have you got your cash reserves kind of solidified? Have you got your debt to income ratios in a good spot? Have you got control of maybe fixing some old past credit issues? And there's a bunch of things, but these are kind of the things that we're going to talk about as far as getting you prepped, because ultimately you're going to go out and you're going to write an offer. And we want to present the strongest package we can when we write that offer, especially when you consider the fact that we're probably going to be in a multiple offer situation. And the single best thing you can do is give it your best shot and negotiate hard on that house and hope we can make it come through. If not, then we'll talk about that too. There's other things we can go forward with and looking at the next house and so forth. So the three biggest questions right now with coronavirus, and you can take it off this after just a second, buddy. We'll go back to the live shot, is when do I buy, how do I buy, and how much do I buy? And that's really it in a nutshell, right? When do I buy? My answer, that's really simple. You need to do a self-assessment, an honest to goodness self-assessment on when you're actually ready to pull the trigger, right? The last thing we want you to do is get into a home and then find out you bought at a bad time. It's not as difficult as it might seem, because again, if we don't focus on interest rates and we don't focus on prices, and again, I don't want you to discount them completely. We do have to be aware of them, obviously, because that's part of our whole puzzle. But we shouldn't buy just because interest rates are low. Not if you're not ready for it. Can I go back to the camera?
Yep.
Because here's the thing I really want you to understand is the sales price is the sales price. Sales price is the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. Well, that gorilla goes away. It just fades off. But you know what comes at you is the payment. Here comes the payment. Now, if we do our jobs right, and everybody involved between the agents, the brokers, the lenders, you as a buyer, and you have a big job in this. If you do it right, you're going to take this payment in stride. So here's what you can expect. Congratulations, Mr. Smith. You got your house. I'm on that emotional high. The roller coaster still at the top of the hill. And then you're going to start moving in, and then you're going to start coming down on the roller coaster. And then reality is going to start sitting in when you need to put some new carpet in, or you find there's a leak you didn't know about, or all the little things, which is okay. This is going to happen. Nothing to be alarmed about. But you're going to come down. It's going to plateau. Here comes your first payment. Not a problem. You're going to go through another 4 weeks of living and learning the house. Another payment comes. No biggie. I can handle it. Well, as we go on, all of a sudden, oh, your transmission's leaking. Got a payment for you. It's that time of the month. I can handle that. I got a little bit of reserves. We're okay. And then, life happens. Oh, you're pregnant. Congratulations, Mr. Jones. Oh, twins. Quite the man. Congratulations, really, Mr. Jones. Can't help but think, yeah, you got a lot of good stuff going on. And here comes another payment. Oh, it's Christmas time. Still got a payment. January comes a payment and it's post credit card time after the holidays. My point is I can do this 360 times. Your roller coaster is already on its track and you are now a proud homeowner. And I don't say this to scare anybody from buying a home. I say it because I've seen way too many foreclosures. I've seen way too many short sales. I've seen way too many people get into distressed situations where they can't sleep at night because they jump too hard, too fast, too far for the wrong reasons. Okay, because the rates were great, the prices were doing whatever, but we didn't have our stuff locked on point. So my offer to you is the very first thing when you start this process is learn how not to react and learn how to plan, starting with your own self-assessment. I used to teach a consumer awareness class at the base when I shut down my first company. I went over there. And one of the biggest things I had to get on a day-to-day basis with my counseling was just the average family dealing with day-to-day credit cards and grocery bills that are skyrocketing and gas going to $4 or $5 a gallon or whatever it was. All these things hit you, but your pay is staying relatively in check. So how do we adjust for that? I mean, how do we actually deal with that to the point we're going to buy a house that's $500,000? Very doable, but it takes some honest to goodness introspective on sacrifice to start with. Think to yourself how many Starbucks you get a week, right? How does that add up? Think to yourself how many times you get to take your car down, get it detailed, or the hair dye. Now, I haven't dyed hair in a while, so I'm cool with the hair products. Not going to cost me any money. Train of thought. There's a bad joke there somewhere, but I'm gonna let it go.
Real quick, Dad.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a question. Daniel asked just a bit ago. You touched on foreclosures, right? And I know in the more in-depth homebuyer workshop, you talk about the differences between foreclosure, short sale. His question is, I've seen a few homes in my area foreclosed. Does that mean I would have to pay the remaining amount to the bank?
That's a great question. There's a lot of common misconceptions with foreclosures. No, it doesn't mean you do or that you don't. Every house is going to have a different kind of attachment to it based on what type of note was held originally, what the bank took to get that away from the former owner, and what they're trying to get back for their investment. So some of it goes back, does the bank own the property or do investors own the property? And if so, what are the investors willing to take? The one thing with foreclosures I would throw out there, well, there's a few things actually, we'll jump on some of that now, is again, kind of do your homework, take a look at what you can get access to. You can find out some of the liens that are attached to that property. If you think about it, if they didn't pay their mortgage, they probably didn't pay their property taxes. Good chance property taxes are on default. There could be HOA liens on it. There could be a bunch of different things on mechanics liens and a variety of things. So it really comes down to the handler for that property with whatever institution is holding that property, what their criteria is to get it off the books. So typically when they first get it in, they're going to try to recoup as much as they can. The longer the market does this, if inventory starts backing up or if inventory stays thin, that's going to help dictate how they're going to proceed with their foreclosure. If you look at actual auctions that might take place with a foreclosure, you can do a couple different things. Auctions can be online. That seems to be the flavor of the day. A lot of folks, because it's easy to virtually go do this stuff. And all I would offer that is just keep in mind, most of them like auction.com, if you have, first of all, the winning bid, then you have the privilege of paying a 5% premium on top of that winning bid, right? They're going to get you for 5% on the vast majority of these auction houses. That's their fee that they think they can tack on, and an eager, aggressive investor is willing to pay it. So that's one of the things you want to look at with auctions. Another type of auction could be at the courthouse where they say show up, and it'll be one of two things. Show up with cash in hand, i.e. cashier's check, or show up with financing available for it. So again, that is dictated on the terms that whoever's holding that note's going to set prior to that auction. So these are the kind of things, great question. These are the kind of things that you want to know in advance if you're going to take that route. Like, I'm going to hone in on foreclosures and I'm going to find one and I'm going to make it work. And I can completely respect that and I can support that in a heartbeat. But what I would offer, if you're going to take that route, I would focus on neighborhoods more so than the houses. Because ultimately, and this, we're going to talk about the location thing. Ultimately, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is settling for a home in a neighborhood that wasn't their first choice, because at that time, they either got urged into it by an agent, and a lot of times it's not the agents, it's just the way the things kind of fall into place. But they got led into it, and they were presented a home that they settled for, and they convinced themselves, we're going to make this work. And sometimes that's okay. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But I've seen many people get into that situation. And what they find out, it didn't have the schools they wanted for their kids. So if you're doing your research and you're checking into foreclosures or auctions or anything else, or if you're just looking at a normal transaction, what I would do if it were me or my younger family today, my boys and their families, is I would emphasize, start with the schools and go out from there. If you have kids who are school age, or if you're a young couple, don't have any children, really doesn't even matter. Schools are going to be one of your primary considerations every time. They have to be, because that's one of the leading impactor on the resale value of your property, because they're typically good indicators of the neighborhood stability, right? If you have good schools, you typically have good neighborhoods, which means good value in your home. I'll take a smaller home if it fits functionally. I'll take that into a neighborhood that may not be the home that I want, but on my checklist, the big prize in the room is my neighborhood. I've got grandbabies walking those streets. I've got my wife, my daughters, daughter-in-laws, my kids walking. I need to feel good that they're at least in an environment that I don't have to be, hiding behind every tree watching them. Looks like you have a question.
Yeah, no, we got a few good questions that have come up just in relation to it. Not to keep this all about foreclosures, but I think just a kind of elephant in the room. I believe, especially with the COVID-19 stay-at-home order, it's been obvious the economy has been hit, jobs have been affected. Many people are interested in buying right now, even as they've been watching, especially with affordability. And foreclosures is the big hot topic. You hear, oh, I can get a great deal with the foreclosure. Couple just caveats to understand with foreclosures. Number one, question came up is, are foreclosures harder to purchase? And if you don't mind, if I just share a couple things on this, Steph.
Yeah, go for it.
So I used to work for a nonprofit called VCCDC, Ventura County Community Development Corporation. I did an interview with Alex not too long ago. When I was put in charge of leading out the director of realty there, we actually used to acquire foreclosed properties. Nonprofits can get access to these properties even prior to everybody else in the marketplace. There's an incentive for certain banks to work with these nonprofits. Well, the nonprofit had to have lines of credit. We would purchase these foreclosed homes. So we would go through things. Another person asked, do you get that information through a realtor? Sometimes you can. Some properties that are called REO properties, real estate owned properties, you'll see them, and that's a further along in the process, as my dad was talking about before. There's different stages of a distressed property. So when a notice of default first hits, and then as you go through the process, right? So the further along, you can sometimes get a better deal. But typically, if nobody else has purchased it yet, it may be a reason for that nobody else has came in and bought that home. So there are a lot of things that can come in with it. I know you talk about it in your presentations about buyer beware. Certain protections aren't in place that you have as you go through a real estate agent through a standard transaction. We're going to talk about the differences of the different types of transactions, especially more so on tomorrow. But biggest thing to know is there's a shift in the market that's already taken place. There's opportunities that are being presented right now. So you're all doing what you should be doing in terms of you're here, you're learning, you're getting yourselves ready. You're reaching out to the professionals, and this is any other real estate agent out there that has experience, that's looking out for your best interest. Reach out to them. speak to them, find out, get as much information as you can get. Make sure they're looking out for your best interest. Trust your gut, you know, which I know my dad's taught me over the years many, many times. So when it comes to foreclosures, though, it can be a little bit more of a difficult process. Some situations you have to come in with all cash. We would have cashiers check literally up to about 800,000 that we would walk in with that they verified prior to the auction, right? The other option is going to the court steps, right? You can go to the courthouse and go to the steps where they auction them off. I also have a website that attracts a lot of people looking for those types of opportunities. The question comes up, so I do a lot of research on it. There aren't very many distressed properties right now. We also had a big change from when the market crashed last time in 2008. And I'm not going to continue to go on to it, but this is important information. It's a different market than what we had with 2006, 2007, 2008. So as Dodd-Frank came in and cleaned up all the toxic loans, borrowers are much more qualified now that are homeowners now than they were back then. So my dad's gonna, I'm not trying to steal the thunder. I just wanted to hit on some of these points because these questions came up. I know we got a lot more to cover. The other question, Dad, just for later, there's two of them actually. Are we in a buyer's or seller's market currently? And then how do interest rates affect your purchasing power? So maybe how do interest rates affect your purchasing power? So two other questions that came up. I hope I answered those questions, but feel free again. The question again, are foreclosures harder to purchase? And then do you get that information through a realtor? Anything else you want to add about that?
No, just one quick one. My last investor I took to an auction, I was up here in the Heights on Loop. And we showed up on a Saturday morning and he called me and said, this is the house, meet you there at 8 o'clock or 8:40. I think it was a 9 o'clock auction. Excuse me. So we show up, meet my wife, Terry's an agent, and we show up with our client. He's got his briefcase and he's looking all official. I've never seen him with a briefcase before. Man, he knew what he was doing and he meant business. So there's about 40 people there, 20 agents, 20 potential buyers. And the house was going out at 4:40. And when we walked up there, I said, wow, this is steal. He goes, oh, no, this is going to go between 7 and 7:50. He goes, I'm good up to 7. After 7, we'll talk about it. I says, okay. So first time I'd been on site in an auction in person, it was kind of cool. So the guy doing the auctioneer says, well, we think this will last less than 2 minutes. And the guy next to him started his watch and he goes, I have a bid of 4:40. And he goes, and there were so many people there who never got a bid out of their mouth. They had, like, I saw several young couples there. So they got a number in their head. If I can get this house for no more than 500 or whatever, I'll put a bid in. Honest to goodness, out of the 20 buyers that were potential buying, I saw about 5 go at it back and forth. My guy never says a word till it hits 650. And it was at 650 in literally probably 45 seconds. When it hit 650, he goes 700 right off the bat. That shut up everybody but 2 guys. Another guy goes 701. Other guy goes, well, I'll do 710. That's I think he started saying that's it, and his agent grabbed him. My guy says 725. Do I hear 730? Do I hear this, that? He ended up getting it for 725. The reason I shared that particular story was a lot of folks had done the research. Some didn't do their research. They showed up with their financial portfolio ready to go, and it went right past them. So the lender and the investor who's in charge of that, they already know what they can take for a minimum bid. If it doesn't hit the minimum bid, they just take it back with them. They go do it another day. So they did this one low to generate all this activity, knowing there's no way that they're going to take 440 this house. They wouldn't take 540 for the house, probably wouldn't take 640. But they started low to get the energy there, to get you there. And the part that was kind of a little bit I wouldn't say disappointed, but it made note with me was all the people that walked there with their head down who didn't even get to open their mouth for a bid. The bids went past their numbers so fast they didn't get a shot at it. So I don't want to beat that up too much. There was something else you said I wanted to talk about real quick.
He also mentioned, so 2 other questions. Are we
the rates, the interest rate. So just give you an example, interest rate has a huge impact on your purchasing power. So a couple of weeks ago, when the rates jumped up overnight because of, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I had a buyer who was qualified at about 575-ish. So I'm looking for 5.5. I'm not going to take them to their top. But when the rates went up that particular night, where they bumped up quite a bit over a 2-day period, the lender called me and said, you can take off about 75,000. They know that now they're calling about 5.25. I said, was it that big a jump? He goes, oh yeah, it hit them a lot. So if you can just think about your interest rate really is going to be the driving force on your payment for the principal. This is what we're borrowing. This is the interest all around it. And if your finances are like this particular person, they were pretty tight. And again, because we've got them qualified here, I rarely try to show them this. I don't want to get them into that pinch because again, this payment's coming after them. I'm trying to find them something here and hopefully I can, but if I can't, it's going to kind of creep up to here. It just depends on the individual. But when you raise that up 0.5 point, the lenders can do a much better job on this than I can explain this. That takes significant purchasing power right off the table for you. So I wouldn't base my decision to buy on that. Again, I would go back to me. Are my financial orders, financial habits in order? Do I have my cash reserves for the next virus that comes along and my hours just got whacked in half, but I can still take this? Now, I do know they have forbearance and some other things that they're doing for a lot of homeowners. Not even going to go there. That's over my head in terms of the impact for that. But it shows that the government's trying to do something to take some pressure off. I know they've got some stop renting or stop evictions right now for some tenants. That's a good thing. But at some point, those are going to be lifted and we're going to be back on our own. And I think that's one of the key things for this. Part of our frustration is we feel like we're spinning and we don't know which way to turn with this. This is unprecedented. We've never had a pandemic. The 2008 crash, which kind of started in 05-06, when the 6 one started flattening out, like Brandon said, that was a correction. Dodd-Frank came in and took out irresponsible lending and irresponsible purchase, and they fixed it. So now lenders are being held more accountable, which means when they pre-approve you as a buyer, you're legit. That's what we want. We want you legit. We don't want you, yeah, you can go out and get this loan and then worry about trying to make the payment. So this stuff right now is we're in the midst of this unforeseen, never tested kind of economy. And coming out of it, that's going to be the big question. Should I buy coming out of this coronavirus? And all I can offer from my experience, my camera just went off. All I can offer from my experience is if you have your situation in order, if you've done the homework, if you're looking at foreclosures, you know the neighborhood you've targeted, you've got your finances in check, you've hooked up with a good lender, you feel very comfortable, I would ask that lender, give me a couple different scenarios because they can't really lock you in quite yet. But until you lock me in, if the rate goes up 0.5 point, what am I looking at? And then they'll tell you the new payment. Well, if it goes up a full point, what am I looking at? They'll tell you the new payment. You need to know all these varied payments. So if you get one of the ones that you don't want, you've already prepped yourself to accept it. Can you see me okay?
No, you're black screen now. So, yeah, I was going to crack
said
a
my
bad
camera
joke.
went off. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, don't worry about it, Dad. We're good.
Okay.
Let's just keep it rolling. We got some good questions coming in here right now, and then I'll do a share screen. We'll get back to the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So real quick, so a couple good questions. And if you don't mind if I share some on it, is that okay?
Please
if I
do
that again?
All we want. Go for it.
So first question, I'll go in order from when it came in. And actually, I'll share this with you, and then I'll go to the next one. So the first one is, so are you looking for lower interest rates? And I guess just a couple points on that. We are at all-time low interest rates in terms of where they're at right now. They were super low. I'm talking in the low 3s. Some people refinancing were actually able to put it on a 15-year loan, actually get in the 2s. That's unprecedented in terms of low interest rate. When you're looking at purchasing, and my dad's going to get into it, it's you want to look at what is your monthly payment as well as functionality of the home, right? Those are two key things that we want to focus on. Well, in terms of monthly payment, that purchasing power is huge based on where the rates are at. Rates dropped super low. They actually spiked up a little bit, and then they've come back down some over time as the whole world in our country is getting used to working with the stay-at-home order, new regulations, the impact of the economy that's coming in, the Fed Reserve's keeping the rates down. So just to kind of, we can talk literally about an hour just about interest rates and predictions of it. We can't control tomorrow. We know what's happened in the past. All we can control is what we can do today. So one of the best things you can do is find out where you're at today. Doesn't mean you have to buy today, but find out where you're at today so that when you know what your financial snapshot looks like today, it may look a lot better 6 months or a year from now, but at least know where you're at today. Now, if that great opportunity hits tomorrow, because you are going to see more inventory come in. And this gets to the next question here. So I'm going to jump into it and we'll talk more about the lower interest rates, but I wouldn't keep waiting because the rates are about as low as we're going to see them. Okay. So they may get a little bit lower. And if you got all your ducks in a row, and there's some documentation that you need to get in to verify. And the biggest thing right now is job stability that lenders are looking at. They want to make sure you're in a secure job. Have your hours been affected? If they've been affected, can we qualify? Yeah, we qualified you a month ago or 2 months ago. Can we still qualify you today? Okay, so that's big. So the next question here I'm going to jump into real quick. And if you want to add anything on either of these points, feel free to jump in, Dad. This is coming from Paul, and he said, from your experience, considering all the current and unfolding economic distress, how will home prices be affected, and when will they reach the bottom? So that's a two-part question. It's a very, very intelligent question. It's what a lot of people are thinking right now. Affordability. So I'm going to talk about the affordability aspect first, because this talks about the cycles. Real estate works in cycles. So when we teach, especially after what we learned with the last housing crash in 2008, is understanding that real estate is a long-term investment, cyclical in nature. What goes up will come down. So you need to make sure that you can handle that monthly payment. Well, in terms of the bottom of the market was 2011. That was the trough of the market. Typically, real estate grows every 5 to 7 years in terms of prices and appreciation. And then we have another 5 to 7 years of coming down. Well, you look at 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 9 years of growth and appreciation. So I actually listened to a couple different podcasts and interviews, and there's a lot of great information out there, but you got to be careful also what sources you're listening to, because some will say the market's going to come down 10%, 15%, 20%. We have 30 million unemployed, right, that we're going to be hitting. And that if people don't have jobs, they're not going to be able to buy. Well, in terms of the stages, in terms of the stages of what happens of where we're at in the market and the cycle, we've had growth now for 9 years. So we're hitting affordability numbers very close to what the peak was before. But you know what they were saying 2 years ago? We were at the peak 2 years ago. I bought my home 2 years ago. And the reason why I felt comfortable buying that home 2 years ago, even knowing I was buying towards the peak of the market, is because I could handle the monthly payment. I was in the neighborhood I wanted, 4 streets up from my parents, who have a swimming pool, which is huge, with our kids, especially right now. Well, not right now with this, but you know where I'm going with that. The neighborhood fit it, the yard fit it, the house fit it in terms of functionality. I understood that the prices can come down, and I'm okay with that because I know for the long term, it's going to rebound. It took almost 14 years from 2006 to 2020 to get back to those prices that I bought my first place in 2004. And the price went up really fast, really quick, about $20,000 a month, went from 415 up to 515 a year and a half later, dropped down to 300,000. Luckily, we were able to save it and keep that home, but we had a high mortgage payment for a home that was too small for us. I settled. I thought it was a stepping stone. So you need to be careful with that. So in terms of asking the question of what's going to happen, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. Many people think the next phase is up, which you had that growth stage. Then you have coming down after that is hyper supply. And that's what happened last time. So hyper supply, we saw about 6 months before it actually hit, where hyper supply took effect. The people, I had a client who wanted to invest with me in buying a second property, and thankfully we didn't. He was in construction.
I don't know.
Construction started pulling out.
Do it.
Okay. Construction started pulling out, right? So we saw signs happening. So right now, we're still at a deficit of homes. We're still at very low inventory. That's what stabilized the prices. So if you think that the prices are going to come down 2 months, 6 months, a year from now, may happen. But with the low inventory, you know what that does? Stabilizes prices because it's supply and demand. Buyers are still motivated. The rates are excellent right now. And with those excellent rates, those who are seeing the opportunities and pulling the trigger are getting the homes they want at the monthly payment that they want, which has been unheard of in the last 2 to 4 years. So I know I went pretty in depth and there's a couple other questions came in. Dad, anything you want to add to that?
I think it's great points brought up. The one thing to truly hold on to is our location. We are the last, this is all relative really, but we're the last affordable coastal community in Southern California. You know, they're trying to put us on par as Orange County, you know, Santa Barbara County kind of thing. Oxnard went as far trying to change their name to Pacific, or not Pacific Palisades, but some Pacific Shores or something. But the point being is Ventura County is still very desirable. It's still affordable compared to the Orange County, Santa Barbara counties. And the fact that the rest of the local Southern California coastal communities have maintained their value, and we're running out of place to build. And that's the final little piece in this puzzle is supply and demand. At some point, these farms out here, I think they're done. They're not going anywhere. They've tapped into about as much raw land as they have. So as long as people are still coming into this county and still buying and building, our prices, even if we take a dip, and we will see some, I've already seen some homes drop prices that are currently listed. I've also seen homes come up just in the last few days that were smaller in size and list high, and they've already got multiple offers. So because of that desirability, because of that supply and demand factor, I think it's impossible to think that we won't take some type of a hit, right? We're going to have a market adjustment. Prices will dip, but I don't think it's going to be a big dip, and I don't think it's going to come remotely close to 2008. That was a whole separate situation that had to be corrected. This, in a lot of ways, is a lot worse. This is an economic failure of our system that is not only got to be corrected, we got to kind of recoup, you know, what we've lost, and that could take some time. So what does it mean for us as home buyers? I think personally, what I try to look at all the aspects that are involved with setting these values, I think given the fact that, you know, we do have this pandemic that has got to play itself out, I think more than anything, we're just going to see kind of a cultural shift come out of it. And the shift is going to encompass a lot of different things. It could encompass our ability to go to a concert, you know, to go to a ball game, to sit in church and worship the way we like to. We got to deal with that at the same time, make these same decisions on buying a property. So going back to one of the original points is, if I'm buying this property to flip, I'm probably not buying anytime soon. If I'm buying this property to live in and raise my kids and my grandkids, I'm not going to worry about the value too much. I'm buying this home because I want Ventura County. I put myself in a good position to do this, and you know, I'm just going to make it happen. Now, if the market completely drops out in terms of the values plummet, and who knows if that'll happen, you know, then we have to kind of regroup. I just don't see that happening if you have a stable job, you know, i.e. maybe a government job, or you're self-employed, but you're self-employed with a need that has to be met. There are some jobs out there that are still going strong right now. I think Amgen's doing well. A lot of the companies out there are doing well. They're working at home, but their income hasn't been hit. So we still have a solid core to our economic engine. We just have a lot of friction right now with all these things, with the uncertainty. So great question. I kind of went around the point, but I think if you look at our location as a county and what the county's been doing, all the upgrades at the collection, they're trying to clean a lot of things up. We're trying to get on par with some of the coastal ones. And I got another, if you remind me, I don't want to talk about it right now, but yeah, when I taught this home buying class in '99, I had a 20-year projection from UCSB for 1.1 million, 1.1 median price range projected for a 20-year cycle. And I got that from a professor out of UCSB in 1998. I taught that up through about '02. And I sold it. I sold it on the thought that our homes are going to be worth $1.1 million. And if you ask your mother, she said I was crazy, right? It's never going to happen. So I told her our house is going to be worth close to $1 million, and she laughed at me. Right. And then when she watched it go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8, it's like, holy crap, maybe you're right. His model failed, and we didn't get $1.1 million, but his projection based on that theory at that time was pretty solid. What he was really trying to say is the growth component with our proximity to the ocean is going to drive prices up. That's what he was saying.
Well, Dad, and guess what? Today, the average, the median for March 2020 for Ventura County, as everybody thinks, that the prices have slipped. It's been an 8.5% month over month increase in average price. 705,000 is the median. 649,000 was it in February 2020. And then in March, it was 640. So we've gone up 8.5% during this whole stay-at-home order. It's still increased in terms of sales. So I'm hearing multiple offers left and right.
Yeah,
still out there because of the low inventory. There are some homes that are still sitting a little bit longer, but there's many others that are priced well, that look well, that are moving very quickly. So preparation is key. We have a bunch of questions popping up. So
okay, can you fix this video? I'm gonna hit stop video. I don't know what that means.
Your video is still not showing on here, Dad.
I'm gonna hit stop video and see what that does.
Well, stop will, you can try it.
Will that take me out?
No, you're still gonna be good. Just don't cut out.
Okay.
There you go. And then there's an arrow next to it. So just getting real quick, Dad, if you want, let's wrap up because we got another 10 minutes.
Way to go.
Yeah, we got 10 minutes left before we hit the Q&A. I'm going to save these questions for a Q&A session. A great discussion, though. Very important, especially.
Yeah, we still got some things I really want to hit before that, though.
Absolutely. Well, let's do that. Okay. So I'm going to go to the share screen. Which page would you like me to jump onto?
Let's go to top. Let's start with 6. Okay. Screen 6.
Screen 6, and of course now this thing's not up. I apologize. Well, let me read off. So the question real quick, what is hyper supply? I mentioned that earlier. Hyper supply just means that everybody feels they missed the peak of the market in terms of selling their home, so they hurry up and try to put their house on the market. And if they do that, there's a lot more inventory, a lot more for buyers to choose from, and then gives buyers much more leverage in terms of negotiating. That's the hyper supply stage. That's when we should start seeing it come down again. A few other ones here too, but your PowerPoint isn't there anymore. So let me pull that up for you.
Okay. While we're doing that, so some of the things we want to discuss tonight, definitely get into tomorrow. We want to show how to pick the right lender. Because lenders really kind of set the tone for so much of this. How to pick the right agent. You do want to go with some intuitiveness. Your intuition goes a long ways with your realtors. With both of them, what you're trying to do is establish a sense of trust, right? You want loyalty, but you really want to trust what they're telling you. And when you factor in the thought of a $500,000, $600,000, $400,000 commitment, I think it's imperative. There we go. I just went over, but I still don't see myself, which is fine. Yeah. It's imperative that we have the right people working with us, right? Everybody wants to default to Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, etc., Redfin, HomeSnap. It just goes on and on. They're not bad sources of information, but if you get into a conflict with what your agent's telling you or trying to send you, and this happens all the time, and your buyer comes up, or you as a buyer, you have a list of homes that you want to see that you were able to pull up, and you can't figure out why your agent didn't send them to you. It's because they're probably not current. Now, these sites are getting a little bit better, but they're still, trailing on some of the on-time information. And if you've done all the right things, if you've gotten yourself ready to pull the trigger, the last thing you want to do is find out about a great property after it's already off the market. Okay, so all I would ask is, in terms of the Zillow of the world, it is a tool. It's a source of information. It's not the almighty tool, but it's something that we can use. We're going to talk about some of these other things. We want to negotiate a mock deal for you and how to protect yourself. Brandon, you want to go to the next slide? I don't know
Yep.
if I can control this.
No, it's okay. I got it.
So these are real quick, not to beat these up. All I would ask you to do, there's first time and there's other home buying programs out there. Now, a lot of first time programs, you don't have to be, it's your first purchase. If it's been more than several years, usually it's 3 to 5, you qualify as another first time home buyer. But with these, all I would do is go online, look up locally, what do I have in my county? This is where Brandon talks about worked at, VCCDC, Ventura County Community Development Corporation.
Right.
It's 501c3 nonprofit, and they have a grant that could be up to 65, 75 grand. That's forgivable. That's a local first-time program grant. When you hear the word grant, if you follow their guidelines, you don't pay that back. And that can be a huge component of your down payment going forward buying a house. So all I would say is look for different programs that might fit you, right? If you're VA, FHA, there's different ones. You got efficiency standard loans that you can factor in, but there are some good grants that you can use and go forward. Before I forget, for any veterans out there, a lot of guys want to go straight to VA, and VA's got a phenomenal product right now. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a time back in the 90s, early 2000, I couldn't do a VA because I was doing CalVet. CalVet is a state-funded program that's paid for by bonds that the state are selling, and it's got a VA label on it, but it's a state-funded program. The reason it was significant, they had loan rates at 6.65. At the exact same time, VA was doing theirs at 7.75. And that 7.75 at that time was the best going rate out there, except for the CalVet loan. So I throw that caveat out there is, again, do research, find out what your options might be, really talk to your lenders and see what can you offer me that I might not be aware of. I mean, I don't even know what to ask sometimes because there's so much information that's coming at you. You kind of have to know some of these questions and how to go forward. You have to know there's something to ask about. You know, I know folks don't even know about the CalVet program. Next slide. Okay. But look online for your local, state, and county-driven programs. The biggest thing on this slide I really want to talk about, we've already talked about some of that stuff. You know, HDTV is a phenomenal resource. Use it, get some ideas. It is a tool. The biggest thing on here for you, in my opinion, start living like a homeowner. So what that means, if you're currently paying a rent of $2,000, just use this because this is simple math, and you find out you want to buy a home, remember we talked about the payment, right? Not the sales price. And your new payment, your lender's telling you is going to be about $3,000, right? You're currently paying $2,000. But your future mortgage is going to be $3,000 plus or minus a buck or two. In my opinion, one of the single best things you can do right now is next month when you pay your rent, take out an extra $1,000 and put it aside. Now that's going to sound like lunacy to some of us, but what it really is showing us, am I ready for a $3,000 a month payment? And I would offer you do that the following month and the following month. I think you need to do that 3 to 6 months. Take that separate, what you're looking at increasing your rent by, and I've heard this from many potential buyers. I've also heard it from a lot of agents when we talk about this, you know, about what they can afford, the affordability complex, is if you can take the time to make the sacrifice, because that's what we're talking about, to come up with that extra $1,000, and you can put that aside, does two things. One, you're going to build up some more cash reserves, which you're probably going to need at some point. But the more important thing is now you have adjusted your lifestyle to be a homeowner. You're no longer renting. You are actually got the money put aside to be making a mortgage payment. Okay. I think that is so imperative on your ability to make that payment repeatedly is you've already started it. You've already made the sacrifice. By putting that money aside and making those small changes, it's going to make a huge difference on your mental capacity to withhold the strain of being a homeowner. One thing that I've heard, and it's not a bad piece of advice, and we did this in the military when we counsel a lot of the veterans, is you can adjust your federal holding filing status, what's being withheld. So if you're married and filing 2, you can do married and file 5, 6, 7, whatever the number is. That's not your children, that's a filing status. So it'll take your check and it'll expand your check every 2 weeks by X amount of dollars. My problem with that is if you need that extra amount just to qualify, then you might not be in a great spot to make this effective for you. It is a way to get a bigger paycheck, but I hope you got a little bit more than that, in the bank, so to speak, no pun intended, but to make that payment, because you're going to see something come up a little bit later, will make the point for you. And bottom line is, how bad do you want this? That's the question I used to ask my sailors when I would teach them how to advance, is how bad do you want that stripe? How bad do you want this house? Are you willing to make some key sacrifices and do the homework? Because that's what it really is. It's about doing homework. Next page, bud. I can't see my slides, so I don't know.
No
This
problem.
is just some stuff about why we rent and why we buy. And if anybody wants this PowerPoint, I'll give it through Brandon and he can get that to you so you can have access to this. But these are just some common things, people have rationalized in their head. Remember the why and the why not? This is a why not category kind of here. Why do I rent? Well, because of all these issues. And that's why I'm going to continue to rent. And why not buy? Well, because of some of these other factors. So it's really about putting our mindset towards, I want to be a homeowner. I'm willing to do what it takes. I want my equity to grow. I want the tax advantage. I want to personalize my home. I want stability. Really, that's the key. I want my kids to have roots in this community. And I'm willing to take a little bit of a fixer up or make it a beautiful home, right? These are the kind of things we should be striving for. Next slide, buddy. I don't know if you got more questions coming or.
We do. I'm actually saving most of them
Okay.
for when we do our Q&A, because it
One
just hit
thing
6
here
o'clock.
that, Brandon, if I could, just real quick. One thing here is real important. Brent, you're probably going to talk about that, but otherwise I'm going to forget. When you look at your type of house that you are aspiring to jump into and call it yours, there's a couple ways that you can really go forward that just makes sense. And one of them is, this isn't my permanent house, but it suits my needs for today. The average home ownership, Brandon, I think is what, about 7 years, 7 to 9, 10 years, whatever.
It used to be, yeah. Now it's actually 12.
Okay, up to 12. Good. That's good to know. So people don't buy them to live for 30 years, but I think personally, when you buy that house, I would plan worst case scenario that I can afford this for 30 years, and I'm okay with that. I like my environment. But a lot of people use it as, I'm buying my condo to get maybe my townhouse, or I'm buying my townhouse to get my single family home or whatever. Excuse me. I would take a look at these different areas and think what's most important. And the one that always comes to mind with me is new construction. Because, it's like that new car smell, and there's nothing better than hopping in a brand new house. The problem with new construction is it does come with some baggage. You can have Melrose, which is an additional tax. It's a bond assessment that's levied against the developers who turn around and give it to you. So it's a pretty hefty tax over at the collections. They've got them. There's some over by the beach off of Port Huenemi's got them. I don't know if it's Mandalay, but one of them over there's got Melrose. They're all over in some of the newer constructions. And it's just an added tax that you may really not want to pay, because that's several $1,000s. But what I personally like, because newer homes tend to have smaller yards, they tend to have smaller bedrooms for the children, they tend to have larger master suites, which I never understood why you give the parents the big room and you got the kids bouncing off the walls. The older homes, though, tend to have bigger yards. You tend to find more ranch, single story homes. It's hard to find a brand new home that's single story. There's some out there, but they're few and far between. But you can take an older home and gut it, right? You can gut it and remodel it. And when you walk inside, it feels like it's, less than 10, 15, 20 years old. So take a look at what fits your needs. But again, go back to the neighborhood. What's in your neighborhood? If it's all new development, it's all new development. But if there's a series of older homes there and everybody around you is living in a house that's built in 1962, we're selling the house right now on Edgemont's built in 62. The original owners just passed away, lived in it for basically almost 60 years, the house is solid. Been through 60 years worth of earthquakes. You just got to go in there and clean it up a little bit, and you got a nice sustained home. The newer ones, they're nice, but they haven't really proven themselves yet. Something you want to say? I keep going on this, but
Yeah, no, it's all great points. I guess some of the key things in terms of knowing the difference, and one of the questions actually came up about a condo. So I'll bring the question up. We have a few other slides here, but we can push that into the second one because we got some great questions and we had some great engagement.
okay.
But I also wanted you to get a few more of these points in. The question is, and I'm going to touch on the difference between a condo and a single family dwelling, as well as the new construction. So a new construction, my dad mentioned River Park, right? Just a quick kind of rule of thumb, and don't quote me on this, but this is the easiest way for me to just know, because you'll see a lot of beautiful homes at River Park at $430,000. And you think, okay, I'm pre-approved for $430,000. I can go buy one of those homes. Once you add Melrose, once you add the property taxes, once you add the HOAs, which some of them have multiple HOAs, also, I've sold quite a few of the homes over there, not only represented on the buying side, but also on the listing side. When you go to sell that property, you're going to be paying out about $1,200 in HOA doc transfer fees, because there's 3 different HOAs, and on average, you're spending $400 to $600 per HOA. Add that all up, it's almost $1,200 that you have to pay, right? So these are things most buyers don't know as they're looking over there, because they're looking at the shiny object. They're seeing a lot of house for the price. But the bigger point is to know that you're off by almost about $100,000 if you were buying a property there versus a detached single family dwelling out in town. At 530 would be similar to a 430 River Park with Melrose, with HOA, with everything else. If you qualify for that 430 there, that's almost a 530 qualification out in town. Now, it's not exact, but that's a good rough estimate. I always say about 100,000. So there's some key little things that you can know to really figure it out. And more importantly, when you get your qualification, your pre-qual or your pre-approval, which is even better, it's further in the process. Once you get that, you want to ask them, okay, is this for a detached home, a single family dwelling? That just means a property with no HOAs. Just a property usually with no walls attached to anybody else. And that's typically what's desirable. That's what people are looking for. But it's a higher price point, right? At 530. Well, it's the same for the River Park. You're at 430 for the exact same monthly payment amount. So just things to kind of keep in mind there. I would always say you're adding almost $900 a month on your payment between the HOAs and the Melrose. Now, if you take out your regular property taxes, which you have that for all your homes as well, it's PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. It's about an additional $600 a month for the HOAs with the Melrose. Basically, tack that onto whatever your monthly payment came out to. So that's just a quick thing to know. The other thing with condos, you got to know if you're a VA or an FHA loan, you need to know what type of loan you're qualified on. Because if you're a VA or FHA, you have to make sure that the complex, if it's a condo, is approved for that FHA or the VA loan. So the other question that came up is something about VA. I remember seeing it. Okay, final question. What's the difference of a VA loan and a loan I would ask from the bank? Do you want to hit on that real quick, Dad?
Yeah, the VA, first of all, doesn't give you the money. You're going to have a certificate of eligibility, which basically just says that to the investors, you're coming in with possibly no money down, no closing costs, but there's still some skin in the game through that certificate of eligibility. So if the loan defaults, the investor can go to the VA and get some of that recouped back. So the VA, at a point in time, wasn't necessarily a negative, but there was so much misinformation about VA loans, VA appraisals, the home habitability kind of a test. It scared a lot of listing agents and sellers away from taking VA offers. And I had a heck of a struggle for many years getting people to write VA loans. Wasn't for my clients, it was getting accepted. If I'm up competing against another offer and I got a VA loan, they're conventional. They almost always went to the conventional side. Now, what's interesting, it's actually going to flip a little bit because of the stability of the veterans, especially if they're active duty, if they're DOD working over at the base, they may be looked at more desirable from a listing side versus a conventional. because of the verification of employment component of the pre-approval and the final underwriting approval process. So a VA, what it really does, it gives you the access to being able to purchase a home without a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. There's kind of some misconception about the VA appraisers going out there and just dissecting the home. That doesn't happen. The lender will put the order for an appraisal in a portal. They don't get to pick the VA appraiser. Someone will be assigned that. They'll come out and they'll appraise the home. And they're really working for you, the buyer. Okay. Keep in mind, when you get an appraiser, be it VA, conventional, FHA, whatever, those appraisers are working for you. So, and I know you can't see me because the camera's not working, but I'd be giving you a visual right now of if you're buying a home that's listed at a certain price. Is there any way we get this camera working? Do you think? If not, that's
we're
okay.
already, we're running late on
That's
time
all right.
too, so I don't want to.
If it, let's say it lists at 500 and you're willing to pay.
I'll be your hands, Dad. Go ahead.
Okay, list at 500.
Okay.
You come in and buy at 500.
Uh-huh.
And then your appraiser comes in at 475.
Okay.
You see that gap?
Yep.
That gap does one of a couple things. One, it lets you renegotiate, which is what we're going to seriously try to do, meaning seller, please come down 25,000. So we bring that one down. Sometimes they don't want to do that. Sometimes they want you to pay the difference. And this is where we shake our head. No, we don't want you to pay the difference. And your third option is you get to rip up your contract. That's a legal way for you out of the contract if it doesn't appraise at that price. So what the thing to really hold on to is that appraiser, and some lenders will cover that appraisal cost for you. But that appraiser is going to work for you. Your physical inspector is going to work for you and not the seller. The two out-of-pocket costs that you're probably going to have, whether you're VA or conventional, going into a purchase is going to be the appraisal and your physical inspection. And we're going to talk a little bit about, Brandon, go to the next slide. I'm not sure, I can't really see my slides.
No problem. We got location.
We're going to talk about, okay, well, there's your location. Right. We're going to talk about the, that just threw me off.
I'm gonna go to the, I've already looked through on the last remaining slides. So I know the big ones that you want to hit is what is affordability and lender questions. You want me to jump to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So here's the affordability.
So that bottom section, if you take a look, this is something that was taught to me many years ago, and it's always kind of held true. The old days, it used to be like $10,000 was a magic number we strive to get into our accounts before we would buy a home. Now, 10,000 now may not seem significant to a lot of people, but for some of us, it's a ton of money. So if you have, let's say you're one of these VA guys or someone who we have the approval, we're good to go. And I've been able to save an extra maybe 10K in my account. And if I have a lender or if I have someone who's really trying to nudge me to pay that 10,000 down to drop my payment, well, you see how much it's going to drop my payment. Now, that doesn't include your insurance and taxes and things out of the PITI, but that does include, for basically for 4% interest rate, 10,000 can be $40. So if I can't afford, 1,500 without that 10K, can I truly afford the 1,460? And I think the answer is probably no. So you're better off keeping the 10K in your account. And some of the home buyer programs mandate that you have that there anyways. But the whole point for that illustration is, the difference that 10,000, so 100,000 would be what, about $400? You can kind of see the difference on the impact of the amount of down payment. Can I afford 1,500? Can I have that payment coming each month and not being cornbread and beans every month or every night? And if the answer is no, then putting 10K to drop my payment by $40 isn't going to make a difference. But what I would recommend on this page is if you haven't done it, and most of you guys are doing this already, you're checking your credit scores between Credit Karma, or I think there's another one out there. I think Mom's on, I don't know which one it is, but you get free reviews. Some of your lending institutions have free credit monitoring services. They'll give you free reports. But there's a misconception. If you look at your report, you are not taking a hard inquiry hit. You can look at your credit reports. You should look at your credit reports several times a year, right? You're not getting pinged. I've had people, discuss with me, well, I'm afraid it's going to drop my credit score. No, you're not a hard inquiry. You're a soft inquiry. If you're going to go get refi on a house or a car, that's a hard inquiry. If you're going to open a credit card, that's a hard inquiry. All those hard inquiries can ding your credit. So we don't want to just run our credit over and over and over, but we can still look at them here at these two sites. And there's other sites that you can pull up and take a good look at your scores, see if there's some inadvertent entries there, see if you've been a victim of identity theft, which is kind of a biggie, and just see if your score is kind of where you thought it would be. Because credit is what's interesting about it is it's repairable fairly easy if you do the right steps, but you got to identify it first, to repair it. Mouth's drying up here. If we go back to any questions, I know you got a bunch of them there.
Yeah, no, we do, and I can
Okay.
touch into some of them really quickly. Just some few things on the affordability. It is good to check yourself. I also think it's very important for many people, and some will say really quickly, "Oh, you got to go talk to a loan officer." Just make sure that you speak to somebody who's got the experience, who has the reputation. Word of mouth is a great way to find out who a good loan officer is. We have a few that are actually on this Zoom webinar as well. So if you have some questions, you can ask them when we do our Q&A session and open it up, where you're actually able to ask questions directly. But that's always a great place to start. I know I've worked with a couple that they have their own credit analyzers. So once they check out your credit report, they'll help you, give you advice in terms of what you need to do to clean it up. They'll also tell you, okay, hey, if you pay this card down, this is the one you want to start with. You're going to go up X amount of points, and that's where we need you to be so that you're ready to go. So a lot of times people are fearful because, oh, my credit's not where it needs to be. It's okay. Get in there, get that first step, take that Band-Aid off, and let's start coming up with a plan now, okay? Not everybody's in the most perfect situation, but what I've come to find out is most people, if you have 4 boxes to check, job stability, right? I've been working the same job for the last 10, 12 years. That's huge. So that's a big box you got in your favor. Now you got, okay, credit. Well, credit's not the greatest, but I'm decent. The last time I checked, I was able to get a car. Then you have, okay, where's my debt situation at? Well, I don't have much debt other than that car that I got, but that's a monthly payment. We're not looking at the total debt. We're looking at what is your monthly payment. They're looking at debt to income ratio. Then finally, income is a big one. What is your income versus your debt, right? So these are factors that they're going to look at, and they're going to check to see how strong you are and where you're at today. And then even if you're not as strong as you want to be and you can't qualify for the amount that you want today, but we come up with a game plan for 3 months, 6 months, a year out, but you're starting the right way, not trying to do it all online on your own. And that's the biggest mistake that I see that costs people opportunities, because you don't know when that perfect opportunity is going to come available, but you have to be prepared. So that's the biggest thing I wanted to add on that. Another question was, what are the best down payment assistance programs? My dad hit on it. There's an array of different down payment assistance programs. And at times, some programs are better and very, very enticing. And at other times, you got to kind of be careful with it. And you may be better off on a traditional loan, a conventional VA or FHA sometimes can be better than down payment assistance. But right now, he mentioned vccdc.org. That's the company's called Ventura County Community Development Corporation. They have something coming out that is pretty uncommon, and it's up to $45,000 for those that qualify. And now there's qualifying amounts. This isn't everybody, right? It's actually considered under 80% AMI as area median income. So they check to see where your income's at. And just real quick, household size of 4 makes about $85,000 a year, will qualify for this particular grant money. Well, the grant money could be up to $45,000 in forgivable money. That's huge. So basically, if you're in there, you have to intend to occupy the property. It's for your first purchase, but some people who haven't lived in there for more than 3 years ago. So if you owned a home 7 years ago and you lost it or you sold it or whatever the case is, but in the last 3 years you've rented, you qualify again for the first time buyer program. The other thing is a divorce or a separation, but you need to see finalized paperwork. Now, if you qualify for this assistance, every year that you're in that home, 20% drops off. If you only live in it for 2 years and then you have to move for whatever the reason is, and you have to go to sell it, there's still another 40% of that 40,000 will drop off, but you still have 60% that you need to pay off when you go to sell the home. Now, the good thing about this particular program is you can buy anywhere in Ventura County, LA County, Santa Barbara County, I believe even Kern County, but I know for sure Ventura, LA, and Santa Barbara County. So, and it doesn't require that you have to sell it to another person who is under that 80% AMI, which allows you that equity growth potential. So that's big. So just some things out there. I wish I could have took advantage of it. I didn't know about it until I was in the business for about 10 years, but it's based on your household size and income. So if you're a household size of 1, and don't quote me on this, ballpark, you're going to be around 50 to 60 cap. Well, for some people that's great, and that fits their current circumstances, and they can take advantage of that. For many people who are above that, they may not be able to qualify for that program. And the positive flip side I can say is the more income that you have and you're well over that, you're going to have a higher qualifying purchasing power, which is going to give you more of the home that you're looking for. So just things to kind of research, look into. Don't want to spend too much, but that was the question. So I wanted to make sure I answered it. Again, bccdc.org. And it doesn't just have to be through that nonprofit. Many other loan officers also have access to something called CalHFA, and that goes to a moderate income limit. What actually goes up to over, I want to say it's over 170, close to $190,000 a year. So many people qualify for that moderate income, but it's not as much money assistance, and it's on a 3% simple interest. It's not forgivable money. So what they do is called layered financing, but then there's also challenges with trying to get an offer accepted that also has down payment assistance. So you got to weigh it all out. But right now, in this time right now, where there's a little uncertainty out there, creates opportunity. So maybe you weren't able to use the down payment assistance a year ago in that market, but today you may be able to get that accepted. So, but you got to have somebody who understands the down payment assistance programs, who can sell it to the seller and the listing agent, and who also has good communication with whoever those loan officers are. So just things to hit on. I probably spent too much time on it, but wanted to make sure I touched that. Anything you want to add, Dad?
No, I think you hit right on point.
Okay. Any other points you want to hit on the slide, or do you want to go straight to the Q&A now? Because there's still a few other questions I can bring up. Go ahead.
No, we're good. We can beat that up, but let's do some Q&A, then we'll take a break and we'll come back and get at it.
Okay, that sounds good. So got you back on here for the Q&A. I'm gonna read the questions off first. Feel free to add any more questions to the chat box here. So the two questions I have is, number one, I made an impulsive decision on buying a condo. I was asked to put my 30 days in after qualifying for a first-time buyer's loan. And at the end, I ended up getting a denial due to insurance problems. And I need a little more clarification on that. That could be insurance for the condo complex, or I don't know if those are personal insurance, but need some clarification on that. I moved to the condo to rent, and we still live here. My question is, my lender is encouraging us to reapply again for the same condo once my husband goes back to work. Is this a good choice to do? And I guess, we need a lot more information on this question.
Right.
Not sure if you mean just buying a condo versus a house. Sometimes it comes to qualifying. Sometimes condo is the best we can qualify for. Okay, so flooding insurance. So if that flood insurance was a problem for your property that you were trying to purchase, and it's still there, it's going to be the same issue that you came across the first time. So I don't understand how you can get around that using the same down payment assistance program if they weren't able to do it based on the insurance. Now, I've also seen it where the flood insurance was just high enough where it actually disqualified based on your debt to income ratios. But again, these are very intelligent questions that you need to speak with a professional on the lending side, as well as your real estate agent. And I don't want to step on any toes, but ask those questions and make sure the agent and the loan officer give you a very clear understanding of why you were denied. Because if you work with any loan officer, you want to make sure that you get all of the skeletons out of the closet from day one. Not that there are any, but disclose everything. Get them everything they can get so they can do everything up front. The more they can do up front to get you that pre-approval letter, and more than just the pre-approval letter, just getting to the point where we can actually start writing offers and going forward, not just walking into a bank, no offense to any of the big banks out there, but walking into a bank and they say, yeah, your income's this, you want to buy at this, and this is roughly what you want for your monthly payment. Okay, here's your letter, right? You've been a customer of ours for quite some time. You'd be surprised how many people, that's all they do, and they get a pre-qual that's very preliminary. With your situation, to not go through that again, you want to make sure you get all those answers, those questions answered. Know up front why you couldn't qualify for that particular complex, or was it an actual personal qualification? So it's either based on the person or it's based on what you're trying to purchase. And then it depends on what type of loan you had. So there's down payment assistance that has FHA, and there's down payment assistance that's actually treated more like conventional, that will give you access into more condos. But I know in Oxnard, out of 20 plus different complexes, there were less than a handful that were FHA or VA approved. So that's very important to know. Then another fancy term they throw out there is called PUD, Plan Unit Development. That one will allow FHA and VA. So your agent should be looking up on the FHA website or the VA website to find out if that particular property is something that you can finance a loan into. And you want to do all that before you ever start writing offers. So I hope that answers your question, Irene. Please feel free to ask any more if you like any more. I know I didn't say, is it a good choice to go back to it? It all depends on what your needs are for your family or for yourself individually. If you can make that work, can you handle the payment? Does the utility fit? Those are the biggest things. Okay, so it says conventional. So that's a good sign. But flooding insurance, I'd have some more questions about that, of why it was denied still. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion. But again, if you're working with an agent, loan officer, not trying to step on any toes there. I'm just saying what I would do if I had that situation for myself. I'd make sure I'm getting some answers. Okay. So we got, where would you see this rental market going if foreclosures start to happen? Great question. And Dad, feel free to jump in at any point. I do have a colleague of mine. He's a top producer with the previous company I was with. And we actually talked out in Maui about the rental market quite a bit. What he shared with me is when the market crashed last time, rental prices didn't really come down much. You think about it, when people start losing their homes and foreclosures start becoming rampant, you see a huge rush going into the rental market. There is a huge supply and demand, and the rental market has stayed hot and will continue to stay hot. It did come down a little bit, but not a lot. And so what he shared with me, he said it was definitely less. I don't even want to give the number out, but all I know is the rentals stayed very close to what they're at now. And right now it is a very high rental market, very qualified renters that are in rentals because they may have there's a variety of reasons, but affordability being a big one. So many people are on the fence saying, I'm going to rent because I know prices are going to come down. Well, I can tell you from personal experience, I have many clients and many friends who have continued renting for the last 3 years. They lost out on the tax write-off, also the appreciation in homes. So, but for some of them that now it's been more than 3 years since they sold their last place, actually qualified for some down payment assistance. So it worked out in one particular friend's situation. But for everybody else that has been waiting, prices have continued to go up. So I hope that answers that question in terms of the rental market. Got a few others coming over here. Okay, so Jason Haroldson is one of the loan officers on here. So he said, I just realized I can chat with you. So he said, there are some condos that only insured the portions of the project that were in the flood zone. That is not allowed for Fannie or Freddie condo approval guidelines. So the how would have to insure, the HOA. So the HOA would have to insure the whole complex. So great point there. And thank you, Jason, for sharing that. Could you say the site slower, please? I'm going to just put that in real quick. I'll type it in. It's vccdc.org. So I'm going to type it for everybody. Okay, and then we got final question. Okay, so I think that's most of the questions here. Any other questions, please feel free to do it. I'm going to take it off. Dad, anything else you wanted to add on some of those things that I brought up there?
No, not really. I think you hit them all on point. I think for the folks who are looking to either purchase to rent out, if that's what the intent that question was, or if they're just concerned about having more rentals to apply to themselves. I think with, again, the limited amount of housing we have here, that's been the driving force of keeping the rents as high as they are. You know, if you can, trying to go back to the purchase side, if you can handle these rents as high as they are and you're not strapped, you might be well on your way to doing this qualification we can actually purchase. But if the rents are strapped you now for the kind of house that you like and that you're living in, and it's a struggle, then I think it's more critical that you take the time to slow it down a little bit and find out what can you change to get yourself in position to actually go to the next level. I don't know what that was.
That's all right, getting some feedback.
Uh,
I allowed everybody to speak on here, so if I see feedback, I'm just going to mute them as
Okay.
it comes up. But everybody's open now for any questions. Dad, any other points you wanted to put out before other questions come up?
Just
Okay.
just one of the last things that when you speak to your lenders and you start that relationship, first of all, there are no stupid questions, right? There are no questions that you shouldn't ask. You should ask any question that comes across your thought process. And hopefully that will trigger some things to the lender to share with you that you might not have asked. So for the lenders that are out there, and I know you're good at what you do, or you wouldn't be on this format with Brandon, and maybe they can elaborate. Maybe they can share some of the leading questions that they have that is geared towards getting the client to open up and, share more than just the filling out the application. You know, how much do you make? How many kids? Where do you live? All that kind of stuff, because there's so much more to it than that. There should be discussion about PMI, or if it's an FHA loan, the fact that I've had people get FHA loans and not know that there was mortgage insurance that was on that loan for the duration of the loan. So if you're not familiar with that, if you take out an FHA loan until they change this or until you refi out of it, you're going to pay extra mortgage insurance on that loan because of the nature of it being FHA.
No.
What mortgage insurance really is, it's putting some skin in the game that says you're not going to walk away. And I get why they have it, but I would like more lenders to talk about it, especially lenders who are going to sell the loan. The investors are going to sell the loan on the secondary mortgage market, how that impacts the buyers, and also some of the key things that go with it. You know, discount points. When do we use a discount point? How do you factor out a break-even point to see if a discount point is to your advantage? These insurance types, flood certification, all these things that don't come up on an application. It would be nice if lenders had the time and took the time to explain some of this, because they always come back to us. I see it a lot. And again, I'm not a lender. So anybody wants to chip in on that, I think it'd be well received.
Yeah, actually, I'll start with, Mark's, he actually mentioned he can address some of the first things we discuss. And before you hop on, Mark, and unmute yourself, and I muted everybody. I gave you all the ability to speak, but I made sure that everybody was muted just so that we're not getting any distractions here. But feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question that you want to ask, or type it ahead of time so that I can see it and we can kind of prep for it. But we're going to do the Q&A session, which we're doing right now, go on for probably another good 10, 15 minutes. We'll see how it's going. I don't want to belabor any of this. If you have to leave, no offense taken. We appreciate your time and help as much as you put in. But getting to Jason really quick, because he had an answer for the flood insurance. The question that came up from one of the buyers is, can you repeat what you mentioned about the flood insurance? That's what happened to us. HOA did not cover flood. Bank denied the loan due to the HOA not covering it. Jason, do you mind answering that really quick?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah. So there's been some changes around that recently with insurance in general. One thing is for certain in our industry is change. And over the last, I'd say maybe 2 to 3 years, that's been a problem. There's a handful of projects out there that the HOA does not have adequate insurance to meet Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's guidelines. And a lot of it is because it's kind of makes sense, to me at least. Why would you insure something that's not in a flood zone? But I don't understand the risk behind why Fannie and Freddie, need that, but nonetheless, it's a guideline that they have, and it automatically makes the project ineligible for a regular conventional conforming Fannie Mae Freddie Mac loan. So we're starting to see a lot of those projects that were ineligible realize the detriment that it causes from a marketability standpoint for not having predominant financing available. So we're starting to see those HOAs get together and vote and increase the amount of coverage to ensure that there's adequate flood insurance throughout the project, to ensure that there is the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac lending available. So, ultimately, if that other lender is now saying, hey, you should probably reapply, maybe the HOA has made some changes and they now have adequate insurance, is my assumption.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would assume as well, because it was already denied once. So again, more questions should be asked in terms of why they feel confident that they can do it this time, versus why they weren't able to do it previously. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jason. I want to get to Mark too, because he had mentioned that he can address some of the first things that they discussed in the initial meeting. And then if you want to add anything else to it too, Jason, I think it'd be great. But thank you both.
Sure.
And just some background on Jason and Mark that are on here. Both are phenomenal loan officers. I've known both of them for some time. I'm very picky in terms of who it is that I work with. I've had some bad experiences, as I'm sure many real estate agents have, depending on who they've worked with. So I only work with people that I trust, that I feel have high integrity, that know their products, that know the different various programs that are out there, that are also well versed with down payment assistance, because still have a special place in my heart for helping all those who need the down payment assistance, because for some of them, it's the difference of whether or not they're able to buy a house or not. Many others that are more fortunate that don't need the assistance, who qualify for a little bit higher bracket. It's you have to work with the best of the best. And Jason and Mark are both, I've put them up there and put my name on it, that they're of that caliber. So any questions you have, safe place. They're not going to call you after this or solicit you or anything. This is where you ask the questions. If you want their info afterwards, we'll be more than happy to share it. And then when you're ready, or if it is something where you want to take the next steps, it's at your leisure to do that. Mark, really quick. So Mark, if you can unmute yourself. Mark, so real quick, and thank you for joining us, Mark. I hope I did you justice on that introduction.
Thanks for having me, Brendan. Thank you.
Yes, awesome for you to share your time here.
Sure.
You can address some of the first things we discussed. You mind jumping into that? So when somebody calls you and they're just starting out, they really don't know where to start, or maybe they kind of have an idea. Can you explain what that sounds like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The first thing I talk to buyers about is, what's a comfortable number for you? And your dad talked about this earlier too. If you're going to be buying a house and you think you can afford $3,000, your rent's $2,000, can you save $1,000 a month? That's going to get you comfortable with that number. So that, to me, that's the biggest thing I ask people is, what are you comfortable with? Just because I can qualify you for a payment of $3,500 doesn't mean you want a payment of $3,500. So we want to sit with somebody. And I always tell them the first thing I talk to buyers about is my job at this point, when we first meet, is just to give you as much information as I can to help you make a decision. I'm not selling you on anything. I'm not pushing anything. It's just informative. What kind of work do you do? How long have you been there? You talked about the good things that borrowers have. How much money do you have? What can you do right now? What can we do today? Here's what you can buy today in this comfortable payment that you want. Here's what you can buy 6 months down the road. And we analyze that process and we work through it. You talked about credit reports too. Let's run the credit. Let's get that score up a little bit, get that loan a little bit better. There's so many things that we analyze. This is a huge decision, a huge thing to do. We're buying a house. A lot of times this is the biggest financial decision we'll make ever. So we don't want to just walk into some place and say, okay, you can do this. Let's analyze it. Let's study it. Let's get the best loan for you, the best plan for you, not the loan for the day, the best loan for you. What's going to work best for Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, their budget, their plans, what do they got, what are they focused on? So it's not a matter of pushing them into a loan. It's setting up a plan and giving them as much information as we can.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I got another question that just came in actually asking for Jason. Jason, how bad has the fires in Ventura County affected the insurance and ability to qualify for loans in particular areas?
Definitely an interesting topic here. It's an ever evolving topic. Insurance premiums as a whole have increased. We've seen increases. Even if you're not in a burn area, certain carriers have higher increases than others. As far as getting a policy where the house backs up to the hillside, your main carriers are not going to be providing insurance. A lot of times you're having to go through California Fair Plan insurance. Sometimes they're having to do like a wraparound policy to get insurance. The California Fair Plan, just so you know, it's basically like a state mandated insurance policy. It's not normally acceptable from a regular home buyer because it's not really giving, you pay a lot of money for pretty lousy coverage. It's kind of like the last resort kind of insurance policy you can get. And unfortunately, that's kind of what we're having to see if you're trying to buy up in the hills or a house that, backs to a hill. I don't know if that's answering the question or not, but.
Yeah, you know a lot, and it's and definitely the technical jargon. Sometimes it gets tough to follow, but no, great answer to it. I guess more than anything, what would be the right proper step, right? So I'm looking at a property out in Ventura. There's a potential with the history of the fires and everything there. There may be an issue that comes up. How do we be proactive? How do we plan ahead and make sure that we do our proper due diligence up front? What would you suggest in that?
Certainly suggest getting one of the things that I'm doing is as we're helping try to figure out and qualify the buyers and as well as prepare them for what the payments are going to be. There's a lot of variables. Property taxes in general are, 1.25% is what we use, but there are areas that, Jim said that have Mello-Roos that will be higher. So we always have to do our due diligence when we're quoting payments and talking to the clients up front. So if there's an area that has Mello-Roos, we're going to do the extra homework, figure out what that Mello-Roos tax is and have that discussion with the client. Same thing with, some of the higher price points where there are, where you back to a hill. The best thing that you can do is reach out to an insurance agent, give them the address. Even if it's not a property that, they own, they could still get a quote, prior to get a ballpark idea of what they're going to be up against.
No, that was great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And any other things that you would say, and Mark, you did an awesome job of summing up what that very first phone call sounds like. So I don't know if there's even any more to add. Anything else you would add in terms of, because that's usually the biggest hesitation is, okay, I'm going to try to figure out as much. I'm just in we actually call it the information gathering stage, or even before that, it's called the percolation stage, right? I'm thinking about buying a place. I went by this open house, which we're not doing that right now, right? But I saw something on Zillow, saw a property that interests me. I think I can qualify for it, but I'm really not ready to do anything. What does that first call look like? What's the importance of that first call, and what steps do you take from there?
Mark did an excellent job of explaining it. One of the things I like to do is just kind of clear the air, really start, ask a lot of questions, allow them to open up if they're willing to. Sometimes, I have to peel back the layers, but the biggest thing is just clearing up a lot of the misconceptions about buying, about, not having 20% down or buying foreclosures. Those are all like common, topics that I like to, dive into and, certainly help provide information just to clear up and kind of figure out from that approach, especially where they're coming from, will help me better prepare where to take them and lead them through the journey of, buying a house.
Yeah, that was great. Mark, anything else you want to add? And I'm seeing another question come in. So we got this one here. Can you or any lenders here recommend any third-party companies whom could help improve score, especially after doing everything you can on your own? At this point, willing to pay a bit upfront for the inconvenience of doing it on my own and benefit of getting my score back up quicker than the norm. So great question. Either of you, let's Mark.
Sure, I will.
Starting with that.
Sure, if that's okay, Jason. Yeah. I guess the biggest thing I would do is, we talked about the different companies you can get the free credit reports, but in all honesty, there's some inaccuracy and the scores aren't as relevant as they are for a home purchase. There's a thing called a mortgage credit report. So talk to a mortgage broker In all honesty, what I would normally do is first time home buyer, let's run your credit. If you're not sure about it, let's run it, because that's the deciding factor where your credit scores are going to be. I don't repair credit. We're not allowed to do that, but I can give you some suggestions, and I can refer you to a company that they'll charge you money and they'll make the adjustments. But Brandon talked about it earlier. We can run a scenario that would say, okay, if you pay this down to this, or you try to eliminate this 30-day late because it wasn't your fault, or certain things you can do. And it doesn't necessarily mean pay off all your debt. Sometimes just paying half of the balance on a credit card works even better than paying the whole credit card off. It's hard to believe, but sometimes it does. So we can analyze it in detail for you to give you an idea specific. I can give you an exact dollar amount. If you spend this much money on these credit cards, this is where your score should be within a few points. So we know and I can also punch in, hey, if I need a 680 score, what do I have to do to get a 680 score? So the important thing is to get, if the goal is to buy a house, you want to run a mortgage credit report, because there's a different scoring matrix that they use to come up with the points. If you run an auto credit report, it's going to be a different score than a mortgage, because they look at different factors. So it's really important to have the right person doing it for you.
Great points. And Mark, what's the cost to do that, to get started with you to do that analysis?
With me, absolutely none whatsoever. The only cost would come is when I refer you to a credit agency that fixes it. And it depends on how much needs to be fixed. Sometimes it's certain line items, which items need to be fixed, how many, which scores, how many scores. So it depends on the person. I've seen them done anywhere from $200 to $500. Some could be $2,000 to $3,000, depending on how the situation. But for my services to run the credit, give them a score, give them the report, give them some suggestions, I don't charge for that at all.
Awesome. And any, I guess, anything to be leery of before just hiring somebody? Because I've heard some pretty bad stories.
Just go to somebody that either myself or another lender would refer to you, somebody you trust.
Okay.
Yeah, online stuff, you never know what you're getting.
Right.
The payment schedules they put you on sometimes don't do the payment schedules. A lot of times they don't make your payments to the credit card companies they say they're going to, and it doesn't work. Your credit gets worse.
Right.
So we could refer you to a credit reporting agency or to a credit repair company that's reputable. Absolutely.
Okay. Beautiful. Answered it great. Jason, anything else you wanted to add to that one?
No, pretty much same thing as Mark said. It's a numbers game. A lot of times, they're not miracle workers. They're basically just challenging the Fair Credit Reporting Act, as far as sending in and disputing items. I think right now is an excellent time to do it, because a lot of banks and creditors are super busy because of the COVID-19 situation, where they may miss the 30-day deadline to respond. So it's an excellent time to try to work on improving credit. Excellent time just to, get your ducks in a row to, become a homeowner as well. So definitely have the conversation, sooner than later to get a plan together.
Yeah, that's great. And I know there's some common myths out there as well. And I wanted to touch on some of that, but it's okay. I actually got one coming in real quick. I think it's important to mention the method of paying off a credit card debt. Likely getting credit under 50% is sufficient. However, people may take out personal loans, which would likely be considered the same as credit debt. Anything else to add to that, Jason? Just some quick little tips, I guess. Let's just start with that for to improving credit. And again, good point by Mike. A lot of people think, and I've heard stories about this as well. Somebody made really good income. They had student loans. They had a certain amount of debt. Their goal was to pay off all their debt before they were ever going to purchase a home. And so they do that for a year and pay down. They get to the point where they have no debt, but they have zero savings. Now they don't realize that they need X amount of skin in the game to get started. What's the minimal amount of money down? And what would you say in that situation? Because that's where we're trying to clear up the myths of you don't necessarily need 20% down. But, and this can get technical, and I gave you a hard time before because you're my friend and you give it right back to me. With the 20% down, you may not need that full 20% down, but let's talk about mortgage insurance a little bit, because that's something that is a scary word. It's a 4-letter word in our industry.
Right. So yeah, VA, there's zero down, of course, no mortgage insurance. There's a guarantee fee that sometimes it's applicable, sometimes it's waived if there's disability. Other than that, you have your predominant source of financing is going to be conventional, which can be as little as 3% down, or FHA with 3.5% down.
Okay.
So that's going to be, the least amount of money that you would have to have. Of course, there are some down payment assistance programs. If you do not have the 20% down on a conventional loan, and on all FHA loans, regardless if you have 20 or 50% down, you're going to have mortgage insurance. And as Jim kind of touched base on that, it's not really a policy that's doing you any good. It's really protecting the lender, really, to the risk of not having that 20% down. And a lot of it's credit based. The more money you have down, the lower the premium's going to be, or the lower the payment or cost on a monthly basis will be. With conventional, it's definitely the way to go. If we can, if the credit scores are higher, or if we could get you into that box, because right now interest rates are historically low. We don't know what the future holds. We don't have crystal balls, but should the economy start picking up and do well, the interest rates will likely start going back up, and so will property values. And there'll come a point where you're not going to want that mortgage insurance, and the only way to get rid of it on an FHA loan is to refinance. Which, in a declining rate environment, hey, call me up, call Mark up, let's refinance. We'll help save you some money. However, if you're buying a house today at historically low rates, you're going to have a super low rate with mortgage insurance, and it's not going to make sense, for you to refinance at the higher rate to eliminate the mortgage insurance. Whereas on conventional, you could apply to have the mortgage insurance removed. Typically, after 2 years or 24 months of timely payments. Initially, you need 25% equity. You could either pay down the mortgage and or property values increased after 24 payments. But again, after 5 years, it drops down to only 20% equity with 2 years of timely payments. With FHA, you're going to have, unless if you had more than 10% down at the time you purchase the home or refinance the house, you're stuck with having to refinance. So on top of that, with FHA, you have a 1.75% upfront mortgage insurance policy that you have to pay. It's typically financed into the loan, so a lot of times loan officers don't even discuss it with the buyer when they're comparing the different options. So definitely, sorry, I know that's a lot of information, like drinking out of a fire hydrant, but hopefully that covered it.
Yeah. No, and just to put in just a couple little pointers with it, mortgage insurance, just one quick thing that I always try to say, sometimes it's going to add about an extra $200-300 a month to your monthly payment. So, if you come in with 20% down, if you have money and you can put a decent amount down and you can get rid of that mortgage insurance, it's going to make a huge difference. Now, if you're VA, you're military, that's why VA loan is so enticing and so attractive right now. Number one, job stability, right? You're pretty secure in terms of your job. Number two, so we can sell that. Where just a few months ago with my VA buyers, it was pretty difficult in terms of what we were competing against. Right now, you look very strong in the eyes of many sellers, right? So that we can sell that right now because of the security of your job, the housing allowance that you get, the guaranteed money that's coming in, but more importantly, no mortgage insurance. So you're going to qualify for a higher price point and have a lesser payment than any other person out there who is, going to put 3% down, 3.5% down. You're going to hit that extra $200-300 a month in your payment, which is also going to hurt your purchasing power. So just a couple kind of points to hit on that. Mark, anything else you wanted to add with that?
Yeah, if I could, and that was a great explanation that Jason gave. It's a hard thing to explain because of case by case, they're all different. One thing I would add though, don't be scared of mortgage insurance. Right. It's what mortgage insurance, yes, it's insuring the lender, but it's an opportunity for you to get in with less money down. That's what mortgage insurance does. It opens the door for you to get into a house with 3, 5, 10, 15% down. The more you put down when you're less than 20%, but the more you put down, the mortgage insurance does get reduced. It is a lower amount. And I'm seeing too in this market, and Jason's probably seen it too, some of the MI companies that we use, they're a little better priced lately for some reason. They did peak a few months ago, but I've seen them come down a little bit. So the mortgage insurance isn't as bad as it was. But again, I wouldn't be scared of it. It's a way we can get in to buy a house with less money down. And obviously we're going to analyze that part of the payment as your whole qualification also. So it's part of the process.
So I know that I tried to answer the question earlier, Mark, and if you don't mind sharing, what is just a recent person that you've qualified FHA conventional at certain price points? Because certain price points are much more attractive, less riskier loans right now. What's kind of best case scenario, and where's that price point at?
Well, the best loans right now, or any loan amount under the best rates, or any loan amount under $510,000. Okay,
so loan amount under 510.
Under 510, yeah. Right. a scenario that fits into place right now, because we've kind of discussed a few things that fall into place. I'm working with a borrower right now. She can qualify to about 425, and she has 10% down, but her car payment pushes her over the qualification. So instead of going 10% down, we're going 5% down, and we're paying off her car. So it gets her into the place she wants. She's eliminating that car payment, which was $275 a month. So instead of putting the whole thing down, it's better for her to pay off the car. Some situations we may not have to do that. So that price point for her was perfect. Anything under 510, the rates are, depending on credit, mid to low threes, and we can get into specific rates with each person individually, but rates are amazing. So that's a great price point. FHA loans, you're going to find the rates a little bit higher than they have been in the past, just because of what's going on, but still a great loan, 3.5% down. As Jason had mentioned, the MI, the mortgage insurance, doesn't go away, and it's a little bit higher percentage-wise than it is on a conventional loan if you're going more than 5% down. So there's so many different things to discuss on that, Brandon, that getting into specifics is tough with this many people and this many questions. But
Yeah.
no, did that answer what you were asking?
No problem. Yeah, it's good. Just I guess more so just in terms of when we say all-time historically low interest rates, what can you share with your experience, and why should somebody, if they were ready to go now, why should they do something now as opposed to wait and see if the rates get a little bit better? And that's really what the question was coming to. Where do you see the rates going?
Yeah, I don't see them getting better. I mean, sure, the crystal ball is foggy,
Right.
really foggy right now with what's going on in the world. But when we talk about historically low rates, we're there now. In the years past, in the 03, 04 era, when rates were really low, we saw this a couple times also, but they were jumping all over the place. We've seen some consistency, but they almost have to go up with what's going on in the economy, with the amount of money that's being put out into the country right now for assistance, for unemployment stuff, all that. They're putting up. It's going to cause inflation, so rates are going to go up. There's no question. So if you can get in now with 5% down at 3.5, 3.25, whatever it is, depending on your credit, and be okay with the MI, do it now. Absolutely do it now. Because like Jason explained, the mortgage insurance will go away on a conventional loan, and you got your 3.25 for the next 30 years. If you wait 6 months, that could be 3.5, could be 3.75, it could be 4 with the same mortgage insurance. So you're still in the same boat, So yeah, rates historically low. Nobody knows how long it's going to last. Next to impossible.
Okay. So I got 2 questions just came in really quick. So one was, what are the ramifications against a lender if they provide an estimated closing cost by the closing time their preliminary report shows more than a 10% difference? And Jason, I see you're unmuted on this one. So please answer the question, but even more so, let's explain what's happened since TRID and why it's important, because we don't see all that screwy stuff. We shouldn't be seeing it. The way that, it potentially was the case back in, pre-Dodd-Frank, right? Pre-2008. What happened? What's required right now? I don't know in terms of we're going to be able to answer what the actual ramifications are going to be, but how's that set into place, and how can we assure our future homeowners that when they go through this process, what they're being quoted up front should stay pretty close to what it ends up being?
Well, if it's an active loan application, then there should be a loan estimate. Now, if at the time that the initial disclosures were sent out, if the loan was not locked, that initial loan estimate is subject to change. But if it was a locked loan estimate, you definitely want to make sure that it's a loan estimate, not just some sort of estimate email. But if it's a locked loan estimate, the fees should not change. There's the lender fees, which are 0 tolerance, unless if there's a valid change to make some sort of change. Like for instance, if the borrower wanted to get a lower interest rate, then maybe the origination points would go up, or the discount points to buy down that rate. That would be an allowable change. But, if they, originally quoted, let's just say hypothetically, they said it's a $2,000, for the origination fee, and then last minute it was $4,000, that would actually be a violation. It's not in the lender's best interest. The lender should just grab their ankles, because the fines and penalties, I don't actually know what the actual fee is. I just know that lenders don't, if we screw up, we screw up, and we have to, take the hit. We're not going to be trying to mess with it. In fact, our software programs don't even allow us to add it. We get these crazy violations, and you can't move forward until you fix it. You have to get your chief compliance officer, looking at it taken a look at the Dodd-Frank guidelines and everything else to try to override it. In most of the cases, they can't because, you know, maybe they screwed up. So I don't know the actual specifics. Maybe there was some sort of event that occurred, but if it was an actual loan, a live loan application, fees should not really be increasing on a locked loan. Usually when there is an increase, if we did screw up, there'd be what's called a cure violation. So there might be an increase, but there's going to be a credit to offset that increase.
Okay. No, great job with that, Jason. I got another one here just saying, what fees can be negotiated with lenders?
So most lenders have their lender fees. A lot of those lender fees are essentially to cover the overhead, you know, the processing, the underwriting, et cetera. When it comes to the interest rate as well as costs, you know, it's really driven by the market as well as the different lenders that are pricing based on the market and the market conditions. They could always, you know, there could always be negotiations, but, you know, right now it's, you know, most lenders, their margins have shrunk quite a bit. So they're being as aggressive as possible in the current environment that we're in. But like for us, for instance, like our fees, we can't just waive the fees because they exist. They're actual costs that are going towards paying for a service. But when it comes to the rate, you know, we could go with a slightly higher rate to offset, you know, those costs.
Yeah, I know it's not an easy one to answer, but you did a good job with it. Another question is, what are the average lender fees today?
I would say about 1,500 to 2,200, somewhere in that range from a lender fee. Now there are other fees associated with the transaction. It's going to be higher on a purchase. There's going to be your escrow and the title fees. You know, those are third-party fees we don't choose. However, lenders are responsible for getting them up front and disclosing them. And if we do not disclose them correctly, we're responsible for somehow paying them. Dodd-Frank really gave us a tough time with TRID. So, you know, that falls under the lender's responsibility as far as making sure that all the fees are disclosed up front. And then, of course, there's going to be your recording fees, as well as your reoccurring costs associated with the loan transaction would be like your prepaid interest, the amount that you need to set up your escrow account to pay your future taxes and the insurance. You know, so ballpark figure on a refinance, I usually say if it's like a, you know, $400,000 loan amount, it would probably be about $4,000, give or take, you know, 500, you know, depending on who the, you know, who we use for escrow and title. And if we need an appraisal or not, we're getting a lot of appraisal waivers. On a purchase, you know, buying in a $500,000 price point, it's probably going to be closer to about $8,000 for the total non-reoccurring costs.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And what we had in our slide was between 2 to 4% of the loan amount. And would you say that's a good rough amount for closing costs? And that's tying in lender fees, but also title and escrow.
Yeah.
Other.
On a purchase right now, I would say about closer to 2. I usually use 2 as a ballpark figure, 2% of the purchase price.
Okay.
If you're paying points, obviously to buy down the rate, it could be higher, especially if you're buying in the high price market. You're going to have to pay points, or the seller, you know, hopefully maybe we could get a seller credit in the higher price point range.
Right.
Just because the financing terms are not as good right now on the larger loans, especially jumbo.
Okay. Well, it's anything else to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, I would just want to add too, because of Dodd-Frank, there's a lot more regulation. Jason hit on that a few times. We're very restricted of what fees can change. We can't discount our lender fees because then we're showing favoritism from one person to another. Once we say the fee is this, it can't change. Any overage, there's certain fees on the contract that if they go up, we have to cover the difference. The buyer doesn't have to cover the difference. The big change I think some people don't anticipate, and some loan officers don't tell them this up front, when I give my first estimate, even before we've locked the loan, I'm including the prepaid taxes, the property taxes you have to pay in advance, interest you have to pay in advance, a year's worth of homeowners insurance you have to pay in advance. We like to disclose all that up front so there's no surprises. The worst thing we could do at the end is it be $2,000 or $3,000 more than I said. I'd rather be $2,000 or $3,000 less than what I said. So I'm throwing out a worst case scenario. Here's what the worst case could be with your title, your escrow, because a lot of times we don't know who that is yet. Here's the lender fees. They're never going to change. And Jason was right, anywhere between 1,500 and 2,200, depending on who you work with. And those, once you're quoted, those cannot change. They have to stay the same. Escrow and title, that depends on the companies. The variables are the interest, the taxes, and the insurance. But I like to disclose those up front. I'm sure Jason does too, because I don't like surprises at the end. So yeah, that's the biggest change, I think, is the prepaid stuff, the interest and taxes.
And I do want to wrap it up with just some final questions, just because I know this Q&A went a little bit longer than expected, but we still got a great group that's on here. So thank you all who have hung in. And I hope this has been helpful, especially having two of our best in the industry here on the lending, on the financing side, being able to answer these very difficult questions that on the real estate side, we have a basic understanding, but we don't understand it the way they do. We focus on the market, negotiations, communications, kind of help prepping as well. Doing a lot more on the transactional side in terms of contracts and communicating with the other party and speaking on your behalf. On the lending side, this is their area of expertise. So it's awesome that you get to ask these questions, hear directly from the source, both given very honest, straightforward answers. So thank you both for just being open and willing to, to answer these. I got one question here, and before I get to that final question, my dad has a slide on here about what to do or not do when you're in escrow, right? One of the things, what are some coaching points and tips for the buyers that are still on here when they're in escrow and they're excited about their house, they qualify for the loan, they got their debt to income, everything where it needs to be, right? But now we're getting close to the end. What are lenders looking at? What do we need to be careful when it comes to, okay, well, I want to get some furniture. I want to get to a few things. I get this discount. The picture says, there's a Kohl's card. You can save 20% on a $50 purchase, right? And they're trying to push that extra credit card. What's your tips or your words of wisdom from past experience that you could share just quickly, Mark, and then we'll go to Jason.
Sure. The biggest things, do not apply for new credit. Don't get that great card that Cole says they're going to give you a discount. Do not apply for new credit. Don't deposit large amounts of money that we can't document. That's a big one too. Oh, I got $10,000 from somebody, I'll just put it in the bank. No, call your lender first. They'll walk you through the process. Those are the two big ones. Obviously, some lenders will give you timeframes on how long your loan's good for. For me, your loan's is good for as long as nothing changes. So obviously, if you lose your job, that's an issue. Things like that. But those are the two big ones: new credit, big deposits.
Awesome.
I'm sure Jason has a couple others. I'll let him share.
Yeah. Anything else, Jason?
Yeah, and changing jobs, that's always a fun one to get. I had one not too long ago where middle of the process, you got a promotion, changed his job. Took a lower base, but a larger commission, and yeah, kind of killed the deal. So I have the conversation with the lender, especially if you're trying to buy a house. Even if you think it might not even be pertinent to a loan, just doesn't hurt. We would rather have you call us just to make sure, if it's okay if you open up a new card or close out a card. Don't close out cards either. Once we pull the credit, we have a good idea. And there's some situations where you might have a shallow credit history, or maybe you don't even have credit cards at all, and you could be missing a huge part of your credit score by not having credit. So in some instances, we might ask you to open up cards or do different things to, get you in, to fit you into the box that you need to be in to ultimately get you the best deal we can provide.
Yeah. And the best advice I try to give our borrowers up front, our buyers up front when we're in escrow is anything, excuse me, I'm choking on it real quick. Anything that you decide to do financially, always check with your loan officer before making that decision. Mark hit on a big deposit. You may think, oh, I had 10,000 in the safe, let's just deposit it. That can put you back about three months. And what that means is there's sourcing of the money. They need to see where that money came from. So that's a big one. Credit, anytime with a credit limit, same type of thing. Make sure that you're going to check with them. Hey, is it okay to put this or to open this card or to, I want to get some furniture. I want to do some of these things. You always want to check with them. So that's typically how I try to coach our buyers. The final question on here is, I'm a single parent, make about 27 bucks an hour, have good credit, but I need something under 200,000. Lender I spoke with said the 9,000 I have to put down is not enough. What would your suggestions be? And, I know we need more information to really give a full analysis. Any recommendations you would have for a single mother who is trying to purchase her first property? Jason?
So 27 an hour. So that's probably about $4,700 a month. I'm assuming full-time pay. Depending on, the credit and debt, there's just so many different scenarios that kind of come into play. But
Right.
hypothetically, on, let's just say, based on that income, that means that you can afford about $2,100 a month of, expenses. Now I say afford, that's the wrong term. Qualify. There's two payments. There's always two payments, and we've kind of touched on this. The most important payment is your budget payment, how much you can comfortably afford for your housing payment. And then there's the qualifying payment. That's, where the lender comes into play. But that's what I'll speak to at this point. On the based on that income, it's $2,100, a month. That would be the qualifying payment. But if there was, let's say, $100, credit card, we have to deduct that from that 21 that, the qualifying payments. That'd be $2,000 a month. And a condo, I think you said around 200,000, or is that the price point that she was looking for?
Yeah, staying under 200K.
So yeah, 200,000 with 9,000 down. So, assuming credit is, decent. Not sure what the HOAs would be, but we'll just use 350. I'm coming up with about a $1,600 payment.
Okay.
So, that's a 3% down now. 3% down of 200,000 is 6,000. There's the closing costs. So the total cash to close would be about 15. Okay. Now, if the seller could help, maybe cover some of the costs, then that could help bridge the gap. Or there could be some down payment assistance programs based on that income.
Right.
That's in the lower, the moderate income category. So there could be some good programs out there.
Yeah, no, two great suggestions. So an option is if the 9,000 is enough, and it potentially could be, but you would have to negotiate for the seller to help with some credits, which isn't easy to do in the previous market. I'm just going to say pre-stay-at-home COVID-19, right? Right now, you may be able to negotiate depending on what the situation is. Based on that price point, though, it's going to be pretty difficult. That's not an easy price point. There's many people who can qualify at that price point, so it's challenging. But an option is to try to negotiate and see if the seller's willing to help cover some closing costs. Anything I would say under 500,000, it's going to be difficult to do that, but it can happen. So just, want to give it that caveat. Anything else, Mark, to talk about with that? I think Jason did a pretty good analysis of it, and then down payment assistance could be an option too. So that
he did a nice, quick, correct analysis. Yeah, he did it while he was talking, and I did it while I wasn't. And the same numbers. Yes, she can qualify for that with the numbers she gave us, with a little bit more money for closing costs. So yeah, it's she can do it.
Cool. Any other final questions? I know you guys have been great, and thank you all for staying on, and we're going to wrap up the Q&A. I know there was at least one person who wanted to stay on and finish this, finish the rest of the presentation. I'm going to check with my dad. Dad, you still there?
Yeah, listen.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Anything else you wanted to add? And all the questions have been geared towards financing. Any questions for my dad on the real estate side that you'd like to ask, or any final points that you want to touch on? Because I know it's a lot of heavy stuff. We just did some heavy lifting there with Jason and Mark.
You talking to me or the other people out there?
To you, Dad.
Oh, no, I appreciate their energy, and I think they're very consistent in the responses, which shows the fact that, they know what they're talking about, and that's basically what we need to hear going forward is reality checks. I think Mark's right on point that the rates are destined to go up at some point. The question is going to be how far and how fast, so in the meantime, if someone's in the market, they want to go forward, it's an amazing opportunity. Limited inventory, but you can work around that to some degree. The key is to start the process. And for the folks who want to wait, there's a lot of value in that. Real quick before we take it, based on what our next step is, we just closed a couple less than 2 weeks ago who bought in Thousand Oaks. They attended this home buyer workshop about 4.5 years ago. And we met them at an open house, and they had some things to work on, and we established a little bit of rapport in the beginning. and a lot of patience and tried to guide them to the right people. And they made things on their schedule, which is fine. They survived some up and down stuff, and they bought a nice property just closed that satisfied all their needs, and they did it with a very logical method. They proceeded according to their plans, not my plans or anybody else's. It worked out great. So the part we have to go from here, this is the meat and potatoes of what I talk about, or what I think buyers have to contend with in terms of understanding how to approach a FSBO, to readying an offer on a standard sale, to knowing what inspections to take, how to protect themselves in the contract. All the meat and potatoes is coming up. So if anybody wants to stay, I think you said you had one person, one or two or whatever it is.
Yeah, that had emailed earlier. So if you guys can put real quick in the message whether you plan to stay to finish this final hour, we'll do one final hour, wrap it up today. It's still going to be tomorrow from 5 to 6,
Right.
with a shorter Q&A tomorrow. Went into more detail, and appreciate you all who stayed on this long. I hope this has been helpful for everybody. But just kind of, do you want to give a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about for the second section?
We're going to talk about some actual examples of the closing costs. We're going to talk about things with the VA as far as waiving funding fees. We're going to talk about what's typically a seller's cost versus a buyer's cost. We're going to talk about how to identify an agent that you may want to hire, how to identify a lender you may want to hire. We'll talk about just some of the basic questions that you can ask, that you should be asking, do your own research in terms of establishing these relationships. An example, when you talk to an agent and you're getting to know their company, if you're unfamiliar with them, do they charge any administrative fees, that kind of thing. We'll talk about negotiating an actual deal once we find a property to submit an offer on. We will talk about different things they can request in terms of when you negotiate the offer, things you can ask in the contract, i.e. if they want to leave the washer, dryer, the refrigerator, or if you want them to cover some of your closing costs or so forth. We'll talk about that. We'll really talk about the contingencies out of the contract, and that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the protective devices. See, the one thing with the real estate contract, with a lot of folks who are outside the industry don't understand, is your real estate contract now is about 12 pages long and then some. And now that 12 pages for that contract, and you write an offer, you probably have a couple of paragraphs that protect the seller. Most of that is geared towards protecting the buyer and giving the seller the buyer's intentions going forward. Now, in essence, it's still protecting the seller, because the way that you do protect the buyer, so everyone's protected going forward. But again, the heart and the core of the contract is a legal representation of both people involved, and it's geared towards giving buyers a way out of the contract and the obligations as per the guidelines, mainly the time frames and the inspection periods. So ultimately, buyers investigate and sellers disclose. That is it really with a contract. Buyers, it's their job to send out inspectors, look at things, and then write up reports, and then we negotiate from there, or they walk away. Seller's job is to tell you everything they know about the property. So between the inspections and the investigations, you have a really good understanding of the property before you go forward. We'll talk about that. So there's a bunch. So we'll talk about time frames. We'll talk about all the protective devices, from the appraisals, the inspections, disclosures, reports, contracts, warranties, lenders, realtors, bottom line, your judgment. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's going to protect you as a buyer. So I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's really, really, really hard to you to get in trouble as a buyer as long as you follow the contract. You follow the contract. If your agent's in tune with you and the contract, I won't say it's impossible, because I won't go there, but it's really difficult for you to get into a bad position if you know what you're doing and you have the right people support, and you got the right loan officer giving you the information you need. You got the right agent representing you and getting to the properties that it's going to take care of your family, and you methodically go forward. and follow these processes. So I understand the fear and the apprehension about buying a home, major commitment, but there's a lot of things that we can go through that'll help ease some of that anxiety.
Awesome. Well, Dad, a great summary. And I actually have on here 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 people who've said they'll stay on for the additional hours. So why don't we do a quick, we'll do a 5-10 minute break. It's 7:18 right now. What do you think's enough time? Because we're going to go hard for that last
I think
hour.
10 minutes. If we could reset this and try to get my camera to work, that'd be great. If not, that's fine.
I'll work on that with you. Everybody else will try to reconvene at 7:18 right now. We'll try to be back on by about 7:28. So a good 10 minutes, maybe 7:30. Let's just say 7:30. We'll
Actually, while the camera's been off, I've been able to scratch myself with impunity. So no one's seen anything I've done.
I've been Danielle prepped me some food on the side here. I've been wanting to switch my video off. He's gonna bite or something. So
I've scratched every itch I've had. No one's for the better of it. I had no clue.
We're still live and being recorded right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Hey, pay no attention to that guy behind the curtain.
But no, I hope that it's I really appreciate all the engagement. I know the questions were coming in right out the gate. That's what I wanted.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's this has been very we got a high level of experience as well as a high level of just
it's good stuff. It's a great first time out of the gate. This will just get better. I hope people share this and we'll look for some feedback, what we could do different, better next time. This whole thing is a learning process. So, you and I know both don't claim to know all this stuff, but that's not the point. The point is to know it all. The point is to share what we do know and try to get great minds thinking in the same direction.
Yep. Well, and again, if you needed to do that, break to the break, but I'm actually going to call out Mike because I see him on here. Mike, I'm going to unmute you right now. Mike, you there?
Hey, I'm here. What's up?
Got a little bit of the feedback there. I'm not sure which one, but so Mike, just real quick, based on your experience, thank you, number one, for your testimonial and the friends that you've invited on here. What was your experience? Just what are you willing to share with the group just in terms of coming in for that second half? Because you know how important it is as we get into the contract timelines and everything. From your experience, what would you share with somebody who's just starting out? I lost you, Mike. You still there? Okay. Well, when you do come back, I don't know. We got some pretty strong feedback, so I don't know. I can't hear him right now. All right, to Brandon, your father, any particular ways to make sure your agents write up an offer with this type of market? Like what types of typical requests should be made? Great question. Dad, are you still there?
Yeah, but I only caught part of the question.
Okay, so the question is, in this market today, what are some of the particular things that you would write up in an offer in this market? What are common requests? And maybe as we talk about the buyer and the seller market a little bit, you can get into more detail.
Great question. That's actually a really good question. I think, well, it's definitely going to be case by case. So, and I don't want to minimize that because it's something that when you write a contract, one of the first things that we try to do before we even write it, we've done our homework as much as we can. We check comps, comparable sales. Hopefully, if it's an agent we're familiar with, we already know kind of their mode, how they operate. Some of them will require a phone call right up the bat to clarify some things because, again, we all operate differently. But some of the things we would write up is we're going to, every contract, ask for a home warranty. We're going to have the sellers pay for it. I've only had, in a couple hundred transactions, I've only had 2 or 3 that I've purchased outright myself for my buyers because, the buyers aren't going to go in there without a warranty to start with. If we can't get the sellers to do it, then, we'll do it as an agent. But so we'll ask for a home warranty. We're going to, depending on the shape of the house when we go in there, if it's vacant and we can take our time and leisurely go through it, if it's got the appliances, stove typically stays in Ventura County. We had a listing down in the valley. We didn't know. We listed it and the stove got taken and I never knew the stove was going to go. So we had to come up with a stove for the new buyer because I assumed the stove would stay. Ventura County, the stove does stay. If they leave the refrigerator and washer dryer, why not ask for it, right? So we tend to request those kind of things. If there's termite issues, depending if it's a VA loan, the VA borrower by law cannot pay for the report and the inspection, but that VA loan will mandate a certification of clear and free of active infestation certified by a termite company. So that's going to be a point, at some point in the process, we're going to have to negotiate. So there could be a request for a termite report. If we have any other issues in terms of we see there's major damage, or if it's on a hill, we might ask for, you know, geological surveys or whatever. Each house brings a different situation, but most standard transactions, most tract homes, be it Ventura, Oxnard, Camarillo, whatever, will require some type of a city report we'll ask for. And what that does, that gives the buyer insight into any permits that were pulled on that particular property. We will want to know if the house is, you know, the building is up to code, i.e., you know, any permits on any additions, again, because a VA or even FHA or even conventional can call out certain things that may be unpermitted. So we're going to want that clarified. But it's a great question, and a lot depends on how much we ask for is going to be predicated on how good an offer we write. If we write full price, we expect to get a few things in return. If we come in low because we think we can and the buyer doesn't really care if he gets it or not, we're just taking a stab at it, then we may ask for a little bit less because we know we're getting a good deal. So good question, but we'll try to you know, tailor each contract based on that particular situation. How long it's been on the market, is it priced well, you know, those kind of things. Did I lose you? Have I been talking here to myself? Let me see here. What's going on? Pete Floyd had a question once. Is there anybody out there?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Hey, somebody's answering. Is that Skip?
Yeah, that's me.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'd like to introduce, for those you do not know, this man is a retired chief petty officer. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
That's my pleasure. My pleasure. I think we may have lost Brandon. He might have succumbed to the bladder. I don't know.
Either that or he's eating, which is probably deserved.
So I don't know who asked that question. I appreciate the question. Skip, what do you got? What do you got going on? Do you have any thoughts or things you want to add or ask?
You know, no, it's been very, very informative. Thank you. Yeah, I've written down some notes that I'll check out, but thank you.
Good, good. Well, the meat to what we bring for the agents is all coming up. The first part about mindset, I really expanded on that because I know right now our minds are freaking going in every direction but, you know, normal because of what's going on. So there's never been a bigger time of questions and uncertainty in every component of our society. So buying a home, I just want to reassure the folks that are still there, you know, these are rational concerns, meaning we have every right to voice this opinion of, we don't know what the heck to do, right? It's not an irrational anxiety that you don't want to buy during this pandemic. It's very rational. The thing that I would just want to equal or come back is that ultimately, I think most of us want to be homeowners. And whether we buy now or later, I mean, there could be advantage to either side that we talked about, but whenever you do buy, you want to do it with a plan. You want to do it with the right people that you associate yourself with. And you try to do it as logically as you can and remove the emotions to whatever degree is possible. If you can do that, then you have a much better chance of navigating, you know, this whole process without losing your mind. You know, it's just something I've watched. I've watched this for years. I've watched different buyers and sellers, you know, because we don't know what's going on in their home life. They could have other stressors going on, and we just see it manifested through the negotiation process. You know, they could have a loved one who's sick, or the, you know, the wife could be basically about to lose her job, or they've got, you know, kids that are having issues, and we meet them at a negotiation table. We base everything off of the exchange, and sometimes it's not fair. So what we try to do, excuse me, is for our side, our perspective, try to, you know, proceed with as much of a plan as we can put out there. And I think the best way to, like we touched on earlier, starting with is, you know, your intuition goes a long way. But really, really hone in on the folks you want to work with, right? Trust your agents. When you're working with a realtor, if you, for whatever reason, you don't got the vibe that you feel you need to find another agent. Excuse me. Same thing with the lenders. You know, ringing bells involved, because like Mark talked about, very well could be the biggest financial commitment you'll ever make in your life, ever. And if you want to get a butterfly, here's an analogy most of us can understand. You go out to buy a car, you're on the car lot, you get swarmed by a bunch of eager, aggressive salesmen, and you get that little butterfly because you really don't want to deal with it. And you know you need the car, but you don't want to go through all that, you know, but that's just part of the process, right? Well, imagine buying a home. Instead of 30,000, it's 300,000 or 400,000 or 500,000. You know, think of those butterflies. So not to minimize the car purchase, but, you know, a home purchase is a whole different level of stress. So if you got a good plan, the right people, you know, stress isn't that big a deal. We all get through it together. But if you got a kink in there somewhere, you know, that kink can turn into a major ripple real big and real quick. So I'm trying to stall. I don't know where Brandon, if he came back yet or not.
Yeah, I'm back, Dad. Can you hear me?
There you are. Good.
Yep. Do you need to run to the restroom really quick, and then I can?
I'm old. I have a diaper on. I went like a half an hour ago.
All right. That's good. Well, I don't
People
even
won't
feel
know
right.
if I'm being honest or not. Does he really?
What's that?
I said, some people are going to wonder if I really have a diaper. You'll
Right.
never know because my camera went out.
That's too much.
It's good stuff.
Okay.
Did Mike leave?
Mike is here. He's muted. Let me unmute him, see if he's here. Mike, you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're still getting some echoing. I'm not sure if do you have it on 2 devices possibly, or?
Yes, I do, and I'm going to type my response to your question.
All right. Or if you do you can you turn the volume down maybe on one of them?
Okay, how's that?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. Yes. If you don't mind
let me go back in. So I think your question was, you know, what did we get out of the last class? And it's been a while.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, I think your dad's wisdom, both of you guys now, because it's just amazing seeing both of you doing this at the same time. It really brought my wife and I back into reality. And I think that was take the emotion out of what we were trying to do so that we can kind of clear the water and make the right decisions. And I think what we were experiencing, and this was back in 2007, 2008, 2009, or about 2008, 2009, was right around the time the market dropped, a reality came in that when you're looking at a home and you fall in love with it, you're probably going to have somebody come in and make a cash offer because there's just that much liquidity in people's bank accounts. So that was a really good one. That kind of brought us down, got us on the ground. And I think there was understanding the difference between bank-owned REO, short sales, traditional owner listings, lots of data points that helped us finally make the right decision. And we were able to do we did really well. We were very fortunate, I guarantee you. And I think when I saw your dad for the first time after many years, he was surprised when this big guy he probably didn't recognize came up and gave him a big hug. That's why I'm here today. I mean, we're kind of looking in the market from an investment standpoint, but everything that you guys are talking about is really exciting. So I'm very excited that some of my friends were able to dial in today. My only concern, and then I'll stop, is that you guys have a lot of very important information, and it's going to be really hard for people to absorb all of this in 2 hours or even 3. So I just hope you guys keep doing this.
Yep.
Can I say something to that, Mike? First of all, it's good hearing your voice, buddy. You know, you hit it on the head. When I gave you that presentation way back when, Fleet and Family had it as a 4-hour, and that was cut down. That was a 4-hour presentation. And I probably got through a good majority of it, but I know even at the 4 hours, there's a lot of things we just couldn't touch on. So we tried to hit, you know, kind of the brass tacks of, you know, putting yourself in position to be successful when you do this. It's something you're 100% on point, pal. There's so many little intricacies to this process to be effective that to do it just in an hour or two, really, it's very difficult. So we'll keep plugging away. Brandon's got some great ideas about some mini videos. So, because we know the attention span of most of us is about time it takes to get through a commercial on TV. So if we can get some little, some quick hitters or whatever, and then take some other seminars, do some actual Q&As with actual presentations, I think we can tap into a lot of much needed bites in terms of, you know, solving some of these questions or answering some of these questions for folks. Because again, we all come into this with a different need, a different thought process, different motivators. You know, some of us are buying for completely different reasons. And they're all relative, and they're all very, very relevant to the, you know, to the process. The thing to really try to hold on to is you're not in it alone, right? You got a support team. But I can't emphasize enough, and I'll harp on this forever, because I've seen so many things go south. And a lot of times they go south just because of lack of communication, right? It's not necessarily something nefarious. A lot of times just it was never conveyed, either in time or from the right person to the other person. So when I have a whole stack of canceled transactions